nuclear workforce.
We would like to express our gratitude to the country and all stakeholders for their continued support and collaboration over the past 40 years. We trust that this will continue into the future, and we persist in implementing the operational recovery plan, strengthening governance, and future-proofing the organization. This to ensure energy security, growth, and long-term sustainability for the benefit of South Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa.
Further afield, and finally, US President Joe Biden has announced he will not seek re-election in November, immediately endorsing his Vice President Kamala Harris to be the nominee for the Democratic Party. In a letter addressed to his fellow Americans, the 81-year-old incumbent said he believed it was in the best interest of the party and the country for him to stand down and focus solely on fulfilling his duties as president for the remainder of his term, which ends next January. Shawan Bryce-Peace reports.
Biden failed for weeks to quell the growing sentiment among Democrats after a halting debate performance that he was going to lose to Republican rival Donald Trump and possibly cost the party both houses of Congress. The polls pointed to Trump gaining a wider advantage both nationally and in the battleground states as his party rallied behind him at their convention last week in Milwaukee, while Biden self-isolated at his home after a COVID-19 diagnosis. Biden said he would speak to the nation later this week in more detail about his decision. Republican Speaker Mike Johnson said in a statement that if Biden was not fit to run for president, he was no longer fit to serve the office and should immediately resign.
Recapping the top story, 4 former VBS Mutual Bank executives accused of irregular activities that led to the collapse of the bank are expected to appear in the High Court in Pretoria today. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Very good morning to you in your SFM sports headlines. Rugby action saw the Springboks having a fantastic win, although Rassie Erasmus is questioning the discipline that the Boks played at. And we also bring you golf with Tristan Lawrence, South Africa's Tristan Lawrence, just falling short at Royal Troon with Xander Schauffele winning the 152nd Open Championship. The details coming up just before 6:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very good morning. Top story. The N12 closed effectively between Protea Glen and Eldorado Park. Protesting at the top of Lenasia this morning. The N12 Potch Highway full closure going west from Klipspruit Valley and coming in towards Joburg, driving east. It looks like the closure is probably now back at the Protea Glen off-ramp. So some major disruption. The highway is closed. Nothing getting through. There's also reports of protesting just off the highway on some local routes in Lenasia. It looks like you might have to backtrack through Aikenoff to get out of that area. It is quite aggressive protesting as well. A lot of reports coming in from various sources of stone throwing in the area. So the N12 and other routes in Lenasia closed. Quite heavy if you're leaving the Vaal. Looks like an issue between Randvaal Road and the Heidelberg Road off-ramp on your way up into Joburg. That's heavy. And a truck fire incident on the N3 North at Vosloorus this morning. So quite heavy queues arriving into that area towards Joburg as you come up from the Heidelberg side. That truck fire incident just by the Barry Marais Road off-ramp. And Cape Town, here's a warning of some extreme delays on the N1 today. There is some flooding. It's a hangover from last week. A couple of lanes on the left of the N1 inbound at Sable Road are still underwater. Traffic is already parking back to Belleville. It's going to be an incredibly heavy morning. Think about alternative routes. Maybe Trekker Road through Parow, Goodwood, Kensington and Maitland will come into play. The N1 is already heavily backed up. I'm Rob Byrne. SAFM Sunrise starts now.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
7 minutes after 6. Good morning. Welcome to SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. I wonder how your morning started. I'll tell you how mine started. Woke up, blah-de-blah, shower, dressed, etc., etc., etc. Coffee, yes, good. Right. Time to go. Keys, car keys, no. No, they're not there. Time is moving on a little bit. Let me just go and have a quick look here. No, there must be. Oh, no, they're not. I know. Let me go and look in the other car. I don't know how often that happens to you. Let me go and look in the other car. Wife's car. No, look there. Oh, that they usually. No, still no. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Let me go and look. Let me go back into the room. Put a quick, short, cell phone light. Don't wake. No. Eventually, after 20 minutes of this, I realized it was time to just pay the money, take an Uber, and come to work. Halfway through the Uber, fine, looking at this, looking at that, getting ready for the show in the back of a car, not very... Left my access card at home. Back we go and find it, rush in, and here we are this morning. So, whatever happens to you this morning, I wish you a easy, fine, sensible, kind of clear, non-nightmarish morning. Anyway, I hope that your morning is better than mine. By the way, the story that was sort of breaking as I was going to bed last night is around Joe Biden, the US president, as you've heard in the bulletin. He's stepping down from the presidential race. This, I don't think, has ever happened before. And it's amazing what's happening in American politics. And we focus quite a bit about it just because I think it does have implications for the rest of the world at the moment. And it would seem he's endorsing Kamala Harris, but it's not entirely clear that she necessarily will be the one to take over against the US President Donald Trump, to take over the race, for the Democratic nomination. We'll find out a bit more about it in just a few moments. But it is astonishing what's happening in American politics in that we've sort of got here. Anyway, Joe Biden pulling out of the race, and I think the next question will be, can he actually finish this term? And I suspect there'll be a lot of pressure on him, and the Republicans will still use his sort of age, the way that he's behaved against him, and say that he should actually pull out, and that if he's pulling out of the race, he can't actually manage the term. So I suspect that that's what will happen next. Here, it looks like there might be some political change on the cards in Gauteng, in Joburg and Ekurhuleni and Action SA. They've been talking to the ANC, and this is a bit surprising because Herman Mashaba has told us many times he got into politics to remove the ANC from power. Now his party says, look, we can't continue to have this instability, particularly in Joburg, and it would seem Kabelo Gwamanda may be forced out. He, of course, is from El Jamar. The idea, as I understand it, is that Action SA would basically do a deal with the ANC, and Dara Morero, who's from the ANC, would take over as mayor. He's been mayor before, very briefly. It's a very interesting and very complex picture. And I wonder how El Jamar feel about it, because they're also part of the National Coalition. Well, we'll hear from their leader, Genief Hendricks, in a little while. I think it's quite important just to hear from them. But certainly, big developments there. There's a story coming out of Nelson Mandela Bay this morning. This was in Daily Maverick. The Deputy President of the Nelson Mandela Bay Business Chamber, Kelvin Naidu, has been kidnapped for ransom. I mean, this is a senior person being kidnapped. And it comes after the Minister of Police, the Police Minister, Senator Mkhunu, said over the weekend that he particularly wants to focus on reducing crime in the Eastern Cape and the Western Cape. And he spoke about murders, hijackings, and, yes, kidnappings. So this is the sort of situation that he's dealing with now, is that now we have, such a high-profile person being kidnapped for ransom. And SABCnews.com has a story this morning also about crime in the Eastern Cape. I couldn't believe it. Apparently people with disabilities, so people maybe who are deaf, who are blind, are being targeted by protection rackets. People coming in, threatening to beat them up, saying you must give me your house keys and I'll look after your house for you. I mean, can you imagine how scary that must be? You're living in that situation, very difficult, and someone's coming in and basically, threatening you violence if you don't give them certain things. I mean, that's just crazy. That's very, very scary and awful. And just shows you so much about kind of where we are and how difficult the situation is for people like that. And we know how bad crime is. President Cyril Ramaphosa yesterday signing the two-pot pension system into law. That's the small pot and the big pot. And there are lots of questions about it. There are lots of technical questions about it. And I think, you'll hear those conversations through the sort of week on SFM in different ways. And we've done it a couple of times, and I think we might look at it again. But there are certain things that, it's quite technical about when you can draw money, when you can't, how you're taxed on it, things like that. But certainly now it's signed into law, so now it will start, and the pension funds need to start this by September. They've got a lot of work to do as well in the next sort of 5-6 weeks. There's confirmation, News 24 had this morning, that over the last financial year, I think it is, the Higher Education Department has returned 580 million rand to the National Treasury. The person they're quoting on this is Mimi Gondwe, who's the Deputy Minister of Higher Education. She's from the DA. And this would seem to suggest that, it's over 500 million rand that the Department of Higher Education had at a time when so many young people are so desperate for money, when there's such a need for proper, resources in higher education. And there's 580 million rand just being passed back. I mean, it's incredible. So I think that there will be more stories about that. I think that story is not going to end. The Reserve Bank confirming in the Government Gazette on Friday that it's now seized 6 billion rand from Steinhoff. And this is, of course, over all of the sort of, crimes or whatever it was that were committed there by involving Marcus Jooste. He's taken his own life. But 6 billion rand, that goes to government, by the way. And I suppose it was rightfully government's, depending on how you look at this. But 6 billion rand is a huge amount of money. It shows you really the extent of what is going on at Steinhoff and how the Reserve Bank is trying to sort of sort that out. And then the other story, I found this very interesting in Business Day this morning, smaller airports. So, if you've ever been in a plane that has an instrument landing, in other words, the instruments help the pilot or sometimes take over and the plane actually lands automatically. Well, instrument landings at smaller airports have been stopped because the Air Traffic Navigation Services is running a big maintenance program. I was surprised at this because I can't recall this ever happening before, that to run maintenance you have to stop the system. I would have thought there'd be a way to keep it going, or at least, you do it over a day on a Sunday or something. But to stop all instrument landings, that means you can't really land in the dark at smaller airports. And if you look at some of the bad weather we've seen in some parts of the country recently, those smaller airports, might find themselves not being able to run at all. I was very surprised by that story. You might well know more about it. Good to have you along with us this morning. 086 000 2032, SMS 41391, tweet us FM Radio and at Stephen Grootes. Send your WhatsApp voice note to 0614 104 107. Good morning, nice to have you along. Some of us are still searching for our car keys. It's 15 minutes after 6.
The Daily News Diary on SAFM.
And Musa never loses her car keys. And good morning.
Good morning, Stephen.
Stop laughing. Thank you. That's enough.
You know, when something like that happens, you must just always think about I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, the burnt toast theory.
No? What's the burnt toast theory?
When you experience an inconvenience, it usually happens for a reason.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yes.
Okay. Let's hope so. What's coming up today? Obviously, everyone watching what's happening in the United States. I heard Sherwin's piece earlier. Oh,
very true. Now that the president stepping down and actually just endorsing Kamala Harris. But as you've said, it would be interesting to see if he is definitely going to finish his term.
There are going to be so many questions about it.
Very true. And also looking at endorsements for Kamala Harris, if everyone will be for her.
Yeah, it's not cut and dried from what I understand.
Very true, true.
What's happening here?
Well, we had mixed reaction last week to the President's opening of Parliament address, and there's a joint sitting of the National Assembly and the NCOP today that will reconvene for the President's reply to the debate on his opening of Parliament address. The Senzumehiwa trial also expected to get underway this morning after a court recess. 5 men are on trial for the murder of the Bafana Bafana captain who was shot and killed in 2014, and the incident happened at the former girlfriend and singer Kelly Kumalo's parental home in Vosloorus on Gauteng's East Rand. We also have reaction on the pre-trial of the accused in corruption that led to the collapse of the VBS Mutual Bank, and after a series of postponements and delays, the pre-trial conference of the former ANC Limpopo treasurer and his co-accused implicated in the looting of VBS is expected to begin at the Pretoria High Court. This morning, Denim Caesar and 13 others are facing multiple counts for their part in the VBS saga. It's been 5 years since the complaint against suspended Judge Tintswalo Nana Makubele and the Judicial Conduct Tribunal probing the complaint that was lodged by #UniteBehind against the suspended judge is expected to reconvene today, and Makubele is accused of violating the separation of powers principle by allegedly being both a judge and chair of a state-owned entity.
It's such an important story because it really sets a precedent. And she, it seems, was determined to stay on. Certainly this is the case. Stay on as chair of PRASA when she was already a judge.
Very true, and now facing possible impeachment.
Yeah.
And the activist organization #UniteBehind saying that she did not respect the law and also lied to cover her mistakes. And 3 accused, aged between 29 and 37, are set to apply for bail in the Bothaville Magistrates Court today, and they are accused of gang raping and murdering a 20-year-old grade 12 learner and learners from various schools officials are expected to hold demonstrations outside the court. And lastly, the Deputy Health Minister, Dr. Joe Phaahla, is leading a South African delegation to the 25th International AIDS Conference in Germany, and the conference providing a number of opportunities for the country as they will share information on HIV/AIDS. We know that Sub-Saharan Africa has the highest rate of HIV infections.
Indeed. Thank you very much indeed. And Musa, her keys firmly in the ignition this morning, 19 minutes after 6.
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
Look at your weather around the country this morning. Tshwane, fine, a low of 4, a high of 24. Johannesburg, fine, 4 and 22. Vereeniging, fine, 6 and 23. Bombela, fine, 12 and 23. Polokwane, fine, 6 and 23. Mahakeng, fine, 5 and 25. Vryburg, fine, 0 and 26. Mangaung, fine, minus 4 and 20. Kimberley, fine, minus 3 and 22. Uppington, fine, 1 and 24. Cape Town, fine, a light southerly wind, 9 and 18. George, fine, a light northwesterly wind, 6 and 16. Gqeberha, fine, a light westerly wind, 8 and 19. East London, fine, a light to moderate westerly wind, 9 and 18. eThekwini, partly cloudy, isolated light showers, rain in the morning, a moderate easterly wind, 11 and 22. Richards Bay, partly cloudy, isolated light showers, rain in the morning, a moderate to fresh easterly wind, 13 and 24. And Pietermaritzburg, morning fog patches, otherwise partly cloudy, 7 and 20.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
20 minutes now after 6 the time. In the US, the President Joe Biden has pulled out of the presidential race against the Republican Donald Trump. He says he will now be endorsing his Vice President Kamala Harris. This means Biden will no longer be on the ballot, but it's not entirely clear what happens next. Brooks Spector is an associate editor at Daily Maverick. Brooks, good morning to you. Is Kamala Harris now necessarily the Democratic Party nominee?
Well, good morning, Stephen. I mean, it's been a week. It's going to go down in history, that's for sure. It doesn't mean that she's automatically the nominee because the president had the votes of pledged delegates to go into the Democratic National Convention to vote him as the candidate for the next election cycle. Kamala Harris, doesn't have any of those votes. And I guess the mechanism is going to be that the incumbent president frees his delegates from their commitment to him, encourages them to support Kamala Harris as effectively he has done, and then, well, no one quite knows exactly what happens after that. We go into a convention in which either there are no other people who have put their hands up and said, pick me, or the party coalesces slowly and fitfully but decisively around Kamala Harris as its nominee. That all, I guess, becomes a little clearer over the next couple of days. I'd note that the Clintons, both of them, endorsed Kamala Harris as the candidate. Barack Obama didn't quite do that, and some other Democrats are saying things that are similar to what he has said. So it's still a little bit of a roll of the dice, yes.
And there'll be another fight, right? Because there also needs to be a running mate for Kamala Harris if it is her, which means that, there are all sorts of things that could happen now. That could also sort of spoil the democratic unity they'll want to display.
Well, if she becomes the nominee and everybody and his brother say, okay, we're in favor of that, and there are no court challenges by somebody, she would presumably, as is the norm, get to pick her vice presidential candidate largely on her wish and desire to create the ticket. And the idea, I've been talking to people, and their reaction is, well, it would necessarily have to be a balanced ticket in some way. I guess in this sense, then balance means racially, it means in terms of gender, it means in terms of experience in elective office and so forth. That's going to be a heck of a fight that she's going to have to figure out pretty much on her own if she's the nominee. We keep saying if, because that's still where we are, isn't it?
Biden now is surely going to face, particularly from the Republicans, there'll be pressure on him to resign as president. If you can't run, if you don't believe you can beat Donald Trump, why should you stay on until, February next year? And that pressure is surely going to grow over time, and it might also depend on how he handles it. And he's published this letter, we've all seen it, but he says he hasn't actually said anything in public. He hasn't been seen, saying that he'll step aside. That is also going to lead to more pressure in its own way.
Well, he said that sometime this week he will speak to the nation, explain his reasoning, explain what he sees as the way forward. So that will be, I think, fairly eagerly anticipated. I'd make the distinction, though, between serving as president and serving as candidate for president. They're different jobs. And it certainly seems reasonable to me that a man who was elected decisively to become the president stays the president, finishes his term until January 20th, 2025 at noon, even if he chooses not to run for office again. And I guess the only precedent for this really is Lyndon Johnson in 1968. And that was in the middle of the Vietnam War and a whole raft of civil disobedience, civil unrest in the country, both in terms of civil rights questions as well as opposition to the war. He stepped down as candidate for president, continued to stay as president, and his vice president, Hubert Humphrey, got the nomination and ran for office and then lost to Richard Nixon by I guess it was 1% in the popular vote, but rather more decisively in the electoral count. The difference, of course, is the U.S. isn't engaged in actual warfare at this point, and there isn't huge unrest over the nature of that conflict. But constitutionally, there's no reason why the president, if he's the sitting president, has to resign from office simply because he chooses not to run again.
On the one side, it looks terrible for a standing president to pull out of a race, especially when he's resisted that for a long time. So it looks bad for the Democrats. It looks like they don't know what they're doing. It's never happened before, and there's a reason it's never really happened before. On the other side, is there a scenario in which it re-energizes the Democratic campaign, the party gets behind Kamala Harris, and suddenly it leads to a very different election? Last week was Trump week, was the Republican convention. Could it be Kamala Harris week? Could it be the Democratic convention? And could suddenly this race be changed?
Well, that grinding sound that you're hearing in the background, of course, is the Republicans desperately trying to re-gear and reconfigure their campaign. They're no longer going to be attacking Joe Biden for being the over-the-hill, unable to stand up properly and walk and chew gum and say nice things simultaneously. And, she doesn't have enough experience to do this. Besides, she is the captive of this thing or that thing. It's really going to be up to the Democrats, and especially Kamala Harris, to show that she's grasping this opportunity not because it's something that she desperately wants, but because it's a heavy, weighty responsibility. It's what she has to do for the citizens, and so forth and so forth. Even as Joe Biden says, I now step back and continue to work on the difficult issues of the nation. That's going to be a very tricky process to make work, especially when you get to sniping, as you already have seen by Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, who said he shouldn't do this, we'll go to court to prevent it, and so forth. I don't really see where Johnson gets any standing to say who the Democrats nominate or don't nominate for president, but I guess that's what you do when you have the pot stir.
Brooke Spector, thanks very much indeed, Associate Editor at Daily Maverick. 28 after 6.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning.
Good morning.
Well, it was convincing by the Springboks, but Rassie Erasmus wants better discipline.
Yes, despite that strong win, Erasmus emphasizing the Boks must improve their discipline to compete at the highest level. The Boks featured several uncapped players, played most of the game with a man down after Esterhazen's red card, and that was in the 3rd minute. Yellow cards to Kurtley Arendse and Koen Horn further tested the men's resolve, yet they managed to score tries even while down to 13 men. Final score 64-21. Elsewhere, England in cricket, they surged to a series win, blowing away the West Indies in a single session on the 4th day of the second test at Trent Bridge. Set 385 to win on 4 sessions to save the game. West Indies were 143 all out and beaten by 241 runs. Now, soccer news. TS Galaxy coach Siad Ramovic has downplayed reports linking him to the plum job of taking over one of the top teams on the African continent, Raja Casablanca.
I'm a coach for this beautiful club, TS Galaxy, and if I can make it maybe a little bit ironic, I hear the interview when my special friend Orlani said that the players called him from Sundowns and they started to cry. Then the kids also cried. Then the wives cried. I don't want to go maybe there because I'm afraid that the Sundowns player will also cry. Then the kids are crying and the wives are crying. So it's not good when they cry. So let's stay still on a peace way. We are happy about it. I'm still here and everything is fine.
Moving to tennis action, the world number 51, Nuno Borges, beat Rafa Nadal 6-3, 6-2 to win the Swedish Open in Bastard, while the 6th seed Matteo Berrettini beat the Frenchman Quentin Halys to win the Swiss Open 6-3, 6-1. Here's Berrettini.
Unbelievable. It seems like it was yesterday that I won my first title here 6 years ago, but a lot of matches, a lot of things happened, and I'm just so glad that I can keep playing, keep enjoying, and I think I found that energy of 6 years ago during this week. This place is special for me, I'm just so happy. Yeah.
And finally, golf. South Africa's wait for a new major champion continues after Tristan Lawrence fell short at the 152nd Open Championship at Royal Troon. It was the USA's Xander Schauffele who shined with a blemish-free 65, securing his second major title. That's a wrap of your sport. More top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. All right, we'll find out more about the situation in the Middle East. An important ruling there our minister's been talking about. You're with SFM leading the conversation. Good morning at 6:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, US Vice President Kamala Harris says she will do everything in her power to unite the Democratic Party and unite the nation to defeat Donald Trump in November. 4 former VBS Mutual Bank executives accused of irregular activities that led to the collapse of the bank are expected to appear in the High Court in Pretoria today. They face charges of fraud, corruption, money laundering and racketeering. And Police Minister Senzo Mchunu says addressing the scourge of crime in the Eastern and Western Cape provinces will be part of the key priorities his department will keep a close eye on. Mchunu concluded his 2-day ministerial stakeholder engagements yesterday, which kicked off in the Western Cape on Saturday. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. Terrible trouble in Lenasia. The N12, Joburg bound, closed between Protea Glen and El Dorado Park. So that's passing Lenasia. It's a full closure. A lot of pressure going up through Protea Glen as you come off the N12 and reroute basically through Soweto. There's some big delays going from El Dorado Park down to Protea Glen on the N12 and some closures of routes that link the N12 down in and out of Lenasia. It's pretty aggressive and pretty heavy protesting out that side this morning. A lot of traffic backlogs. A lot of traffic getting caught on Nirvana Drive trying to exit out through sort of Freedom Park and Aikenoff areas. So just make sure you've got plenty of time to get out of that Lenasia area or to come through on the closed N12 and just travel carefully, please. A big crash on the R59 between the Vaal area and Joburg. The crash is just after the Rand-Vaal exit. It's quite a heavy backlog there on the 59 towards Joburg, and a truck fire on the N3 north at Barry Marere in Vosloorus causing quite a big delay if you're arriving up from Heidelberg side. There's a collision on the M1 south before Allendale. That traffic's already already parking back through towards Brakfontein. It's super heavy, the N1 this morning, coming through Midrand in towards that crash scene. Durban not missing out on the fun and games. A collision near Clare Road Bridge on the N2 South, so delays coming down the N2 from Queen Nandi Drive already. And Cape Town, we've been warning about this, the flooding on the N1 inbound. We saw the flooding just in front of Sable Road, just before you get to Sable Road, causing amazing backlogs on Saturday and Sunday. And here we are Monday. The water hasn't really receded, and you've got Monday peak volumes in it. So if you take the N1 into Cape Town, it's already queuing right back deep into Brackenfell territory. Also, no traffic lights on Marine Drive at Broad Road near Milnerton High School. So Marine Drive, I think as we saw on Friday, heavy traffic again coming through on that route. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Interconnectivity, good morning. How are you doing this Monday?
Morning, Stephen. I'm good, thanks, and I hope you're well.
No comment. How are the markets this morning?
Well, investors are hoping that strong company earnings reports will put an end to the recent decline in tech stocks, which has slowed down the U.S. market's growth this year. Now, the tech stock has lost about $900 billion in value in just over a week on the back of increased interest rate cut bets and a possible second Trump presidency, which saw investors move their money from tech stocks to other sectors that haven't done as well this year. Now, taking that into account, we saw Wall Street stocks end off last week on a negative note, with all indices in negative territory. We're seeing the same sort of mood playing out in Asia. Those stocks mostly in the red. Traders on that are digesting the news that US President Joe Biden dropped out of the presidential race and a monetary easing announcement from the People's Bank of China. Back at home, volatility continues to be the name of the game as the JSE closed mostly lower on Friday. The All share lost over 0.5%, while the rand remains steady at 18.24 to the dollar.
And China stepping up efforts to boost the economy. That's interesting. I mean, they seem to be slowing a little bit.
They have been slowing down on their big bazooka stimulus, and today we saw the country's central bank, the People's Bank of China, deciding to ease monetary policy, cutting a key short-term policy rate by 10 basis points for the first time in almost a year. This comes as it attempts, of course, to support the economy after growth disappointed. Growth in China slowed to 4.7% in the second quarter. This was way below market expectations and under the government's growth target of 5%. This move also comes after a Chinese plenum where government officials gathered to discuss growth. The outcome of that meeting somewhat disappointed markets, as there was little change to the long-term blueprint for the world's second largest economy, with a continued focus still being on technology and manufacturing. Analysts in the meantime say the cut will boost the economy, but as mentioned, it will be limited as the modest reduction won't be enough to stimulate households and businesses' borrowing appetite.
And then a study finding that high energy costs are still hampering the mining industry in South Africa.
Now, according to a study by Boston Consulting Group, high energy costs are weighing on the South African mining industry. It's noted that local energy costs are the fourth highest in a comparison of similar mining jurisdictions and are expected to continue increasing as electricity prices become more reflective of their true costs. Now, the majority of grid-connected energy generation, about 80 to 90%, comes from coal and diesel, with a limited share of renewable and other energy sources. But there is a growing demand for mining company customers for cleaner energy sources, and the country's energy transmission system is a bottleneck, making it hard to add new cleaner energy sources. In an attempt to address such issues, Eskom's National Transmission Company of South Africa officially began trading this month after unbundling from the power utility. Now, as activity picks up there, BCG has advised mining firms to invest in cost-effective, reliable green energy.
Intalang, thanks very much indeed. Intalang Nichela back, of course, with us in an hour's time. More business news through the day here on SAFM.
Africa Update on SAFM Sunrise, a continental overview of current African affairs.
Russ Advocate Sipho Mantula from the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs at UNISA. Good morning.
Steve, a fresh morning and Jumbo Africa to the listeners.
The Kenyan President William Ruto, after firing his cabinet, he now appoints 11 people to the cabinet. What's it looking like?
Stephen, that cabinet looks still the same, nothing new under the sun, Stephen. He has retained 6 former ministers in key areas like defense, Interior, but the finance minister not yet. And this is a very controversial ministry, considering that it falls under that the finance bill that has caused Kenya for a month to be in this riots or protest, that we can say that the revolution that is in Kenya is influenced by these ministers. But the opposition members even are not happy with this issue of Ruto saying he wants to form a broad-based government, what we call a government of national unity. And many others say they will not join it. Others must join it as individuals, not as opposition parties. We still know, Stephen, there's still tensions in Kenya, despite that Ruto has appointed few ministers in his cabinet now.
And then in Ghana, diplomats and delegates from across the continent, they're there for the ordinary session, the 45th ordinary session of the African Union Executive Council.
Stephen, this is what we call the media coordination meeting. I saw the Minister of International Relations, Ronald Lamola, was in Addis as well over the weekend. The meeting ended yesterday, actually, Stephen, where also the President of Nigeria, Bola Tinubu, was presenting the challenges that are facing the West Africa community. But the theme is still under Educate and Skill Africa for the 21st century. There were issues that Bola Tinubu had to cover on peace and security, the issues of humanitarian, social development in the West Africa region. I saw also that the Africa Development Bank Group, President Adesina, also joined some of the key stakeholders looking at financial issues that affect the African continent, the issue of regional integration, as well as innovative and sustainable initiatives for the African continent. It was a very important meeting, Stephen, considering what is the continent it is going through, whether in the Sahel or also in East Africa, even with the DRC crisis, that you still have a conflict in the Eastern Congo.
And then in Mali, the king of Kora, Taumani Diabate, passing away.
At the age of 58, Stephen, this is the king of Kora, Taumani Diabate, Stephen. The news of his passing has led to a wave of tributes from across the West Africa music scene, but also from the Southern Africa. I saw on the Twitter streets there were many tributes that were sent to the king of Kora, who was born in 1965 into a family of griots, Diabate, rooted in Mali's rich cultural heritage.
And then in Namibia, the founding president, Sam Nujoma, he's not well.
Sam Nujoma is not well from his son, Stephen, what is reported over the weekend. They say his last appearance in the public was in February at the former president Hakeem Gob's memorial service and the funeral. But his personal doctor have also said that the founding father of Namibia is in good health and he has been discharged from a hospital. But the family is still saying that he's still not well, Stephen, he's still recovering. Probably the father of Namibia will recover speedily.
And then in our archives, all the way back to the 21st of July 1921.
I thought, let me look yesterday, Stephen, 103 years. He will have 103 years, a healer, a philosopher, and author and artist. Busamazulu Mpumelelo Kredomuta was born in KwaZulu-Natal. We have said it before, Stephen, he passed on just before COVID-19 on the 25th of March 2020. Authored many books like Indaba, My Children, Let Not My Country Die, Songs of the Stars, as well as the Zulu Shaman. He has predicted a lot, Stephen, if you look in our 30 years of our archives of democracy and freedom, the 2001 World Trade Center, the assassination of Pisani, the issue of load shedding that we are in, and the removal of the former President Thabo Mbeki. He has also given his forecast or scenarios around those issues, Stephen. Asante sana LG, as we are still leading the conversation, SAFM, observing the International Mandela Month.
Rights Advocate Sipho Mantula, thank you so much. Of course, back tomorrow mornings from our continent through the day here on SAFM.
Yeah, we can do this. It's been a long time coming. This deserves to grow. It's a great business. If they don't like it, someone else will. And fund me so I can expand. Maybe I can offer them shares. I need to retain equity for staff. It's going to be good for recruitment. Yeah.
Possible begins with that one great idea. When Telkom enables entrepreneurs to make their ingenuity a reality, we grow local economies. Telkom. Possible begins here.
For years, Outsurance have been saying they will save you money on your car insurance or give you cash if they don't. Here are real clients who put it to the test.
Hi, my name is Deboho. I'm 36 from Benoni and I pay 762 Rand for my Ford Figo 2018 model with Outsurance Comprehensive.
So here's how it works. SMS out to 30754. We'll give you a no-obligation car insurance quote. If the quote is less than you're currently paying, you'll end up saving money on your car insurance every month. And if it's more than you're currently paying, you can ask for 500 Rand. And if you've been with the same insurer and claim free for 3 years or more, and we can't beat your premium, tell us you want 1,500 Rand.
As the slogan goes, you always get something out, either your savings or the 500 Rand.
Pay less every month or get cash. You just can't lose. Go to outsurance.co.za for a 10-minute quote that could save you thousands. Licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
If you love premium documentaries, then we know you love Thursday nights on S3. Broadcaster Alice Levine asks if there's anything such as normal when it comes to sex and sexuality in the 2020s. She meets sexual adventurers up and down Britain, those pushing the boundaries of sex, intimacy and relationships. Tune into Sex Actually, Thursdays at 9 p.m. Channel your inner curiosity with BBC Primetime, only on S3. Open up. S3.
SAFM 104 to 107. Nationwide.
Well, you know the number this morning, 086 000 2032. Lots to talk about. There's the 6 billion rand seized by the South African Reserve Bank from the accounts of Steinhoff. I think that's been over a period of time. It's a huge amount of money. There's the situation in Joburg and Ekurhuleni. Action SA, it seems, might actually back the ANC and help the ANC elect a mayor there. What happens to Kabela Gwamanda, for example? El Jamar is a member of the coalition that's currently sort of led by President Cyril Ramaphosa, the ANC. So, very interesting situation developing there. Other issues as well this morning, of course, around, for example, the two-pot retirement system now finally signed into law. Well, the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Ronald Lamola, welcoming a ruling by the International Court of Justice that Israel's occupation of the West Bank and East Jerusalem violates international law. The ruling comes after a request was made by the United Nations 2 years ago for a finding from the court on whether or not Israel's occupation of this area is legal. Now the court has found it is illegal. The ruling is not legally binding on Israel, which has condemned it. This case is also completely separate to the application our government has brought, asking the ICJ to rule that Israel's actions in Gaza constitute a genocide. Professor Andre Thomashausen is a Professor Emeritus of International Law at UNISA. Professor Thomashausen, good morning.
Yes, good morning, Stephen. Good morning, listeners.
On what basis did the court find that Israel's occupation of these areas is illegal? What do they say is wrong about what Israel's doing?
Well, they apply the international law principles that you can read in textbooks, that force may only be used in self-defense, that Israel, in self-defense, occupied parts of what is known as the West Bank, adjacent to the country Jordania. They also note that there is no ongoing occupation of the Gaza Strip, which is separate from the West Bank, but that as occupiers, and they rely on their advisory opinion on South Africa and Namibia, that as occupiers, Israel has a lot of responsibilities. It is responsible for the well-being of the people in the occupied territory. It may not annex parts of an occupied territory to become their own. It may not incorporate it into Israel. And of course, all these principles they had already pronounced on in their judgment against Russia after the special military operation in Ukraine. And just like Russia has completely ignored that judgment, Israel will also ignore this advisory opinion which the ICJ has rendered to the UN General Assembly.
In its response, I mean, Israel's obviously condemned the ruling. It says it has a historic claim to this area. They talk about ancient history. We're going back thousands of years here. Can you base a legal claim on history that is this contested? I mean, it's incredibly contested and goes back thousands of years. Or do you need to have a more recent claim than that?
Well, I'm of the opinion we can't go back in history forever. Otherwise, we would have to give, for instance, the Iberic Peninsula in Europe. We would have to give it back to Morocco and Tunisia, who used to be the countries that constituted the Caliphate, which had occupied most of the Iberic Peninsula for 700 years. But it's a long time ago. And we have other wars that commenced like this. Germany's claim to large parts of East Prussia, to Silesia, to to other parts in the world caused basically World War II. This going back on historic territorial claims is a very serious threat to peace and to security. However, we see in this advisory opinion that all 11 judges were not in agreement. Each one appended to their ruling a dissenting opinion. And most importantly, the Vice President, Judge Sebutinde, completely disagreed with the ruling and pointed out, and that is very interesting and relevant, that the advisory opinion should have respected Israel's right not to accept the jurisdiction of the ICJ in this case, and that it should have respected a formal, ongoing, negotiating peace process written down in formal treaties, the Oslo I and Oslo II agreements, and that by making this ruling with unrealistic demands, that Israel should immediately withdraw thousands of people that are settlers in the West Bank, that this ruling does not contribute to the resolution of the ongoing conflict and tensions in the Middle East.
So much has happened in front of the International Court of Justice, and as you point out, Russia has sort of disregarded it. Israel has disregarded it, although this is not binding. We all know that Israel, as far as I can see, I don't know if the court has accepted this yet, but our government says that Israel has disregarded what the court says are binding rulings about how it's treating people in Gaza. So on one level, the court is kind of being ignored. On another level, it does seem to me that the court is playing, and the forum of the court is playing an important role in the court of world public opinion. I mean, is the court becoming on one side legally sort of weaker, on the other side kind of politically stronger?
Well, I'm sure the court would like it to be like that. The difficulty is that by applying law as it is written in textbooks, these judges are closing their eyes to the fact that historic reality, events, things that happen and are not undone, that they also create a rule. There's a rule making aspect of historical reality. And this is very serious, because if the court keeps demanding things that nobody can actually make happen, nobody can make Israel disappear, then the court becomes just a ping pong in the games of international politics. And of course, the countries supporting Israel will have one view, and the countries not supporting it will have the opposing view. But it does not help to resolve the conflict. Resolving this conflict does need territorial rearrangements of borders. This is how World War II ended, by rearranging Europe's borders, and that became a new foundation for peace. And I think in the Middle East, nothing short of that will solve the issue.
Professor Andrea Thomas-Hausen, thank you. Professor Emeritus of International Law at UNISA, 9 minutes to 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Major disruption around the Lenasia area this morning. The N12 closed effectively from Protea Glen through towards El Dorado Park. That's on your Joburg-bound carriageway. So all that traffic on the Potch Highway driving up to Joburg, finding itself being diverted up through Protea Glen. There's some very heavy traffic there. And then your exits from Lenasia, the 554 and Cliffsrand Valley Road, going effectively from Nirvana Drive up to the highway, are also closed. So that's forcing some big queues out through Freedom Park and through Aikenoff. So Nirvana Drive out towards a very congested Golden Highway. It's all very heavily backed up there. And if you're on the N12, Potch Highway going down towards Protea Glen, towards Potchefstroom, there's some disruption there. It looks like you might be able to get through on that route, but it is slow, but certainly closed on the Joburg-bound carriageway. Other big issues, major crash, major delays on the R59 between Randval and the Heidelberg Road, 550 exit. That's a really big backlog of traffic driving in from the Vaal towards that sea. Also pretty heavily backed up on the N3 North coming in from Heidelberg to Joburg with the truck truck fire incident by Barry Moreira at Vosloorus. The N1 South is getting pretty heavily backed up on the run from Pretoria down to Joburg. It's crash blocking 2 lanes between New Road and Allendale Road. Traffic is pushing all the way back to Brockfontein Interchange. There's some delays getting into that on Samrand, on Olifants, on New Road because of the significant delay on the N1, and a lot of traffic coming off at the old Joburg Road exit in Centurion and jamming up the R101 as you head south through the Midrand area. Durban not missing the fun and games either. There's a couple of crash scenes on the N2 South, one between Queen Nandi and Inanda Road, and another between Umgeni Road and Clare Road Bridge. So the N2 coming through from Queen Nandi's a heavy backlog. Also crash on the N3 driving past Pinetown towards Durban just by Paradise Valley, so that traffic starting to build up. And Cape Town this morning, the N1 inbound, we've been warning about this, flooding in front of Canal Walk. On the N1 into town just by Sable Road, a couple of lanes are obstructed on the left. Traffic's all the way back to Kraaifontein. That's how bad it is this morning. You'll also see it quite heavily on the approaches to the N1 highway, particularly the N7 coming up from Goodwood. Big delays trying to get off that route. In fact, both ways, northbound from Goodwood, southbound from Summer Greens, Edgemead, both ways on the N7 really struggling to get into that N1 backlog, trying to avoid the N1 and the routes that feed into it this morning. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The countdown to the Paris Olympics 2024 is just days away. Live the intense rivalries, inspiring comebacks, and record-breaking performances from a wide variety of sporting disciplines such as aquatics, athletics, gymnastics, boxing, breakdancing, and football. Experience the Olympic Games Paris 2024 from Friday 26 July until Sunday 11 August. Live on SABC Sport, the proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024. For the love of the game.
Hey, want to check your TV license balance conveniently? Look no further. Our SMS service allows you to do just that. By sending a message containing your ID or TV license number to 44210, you can quickly access your balance without needing multiple inquiries or waiting on hold. Plus, standard SMS rates apply. Take advantage of this efficient method to stay informed and streamline your payment process today. T's and C's apply.
Big stories of the day. #SAFM Sunrise.
5 minutes to 7 the time. Well, I mentioned in my introduction this morning about the situation in Mthatha, where people who are deaf and blind are reporting that they are now the victims of protection rackets. People threaten them with violence if they don't pay them money. They're told they must hand over the keys to their homes, things like that. Lewis Nzimande is the director at the SA National Council for the Blind, phoning in this morning. Lewis, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen.
This is a terrible story playing out in Mthatha.
Seriously so, Stephen, and we're so worried because there is also a high school there, a school for the blind and deaf children. This complex that they're talking about, there's a school right across the fence, same piece of land, and it will definitely affect the school. And as the South African National Council for the Blind, Stephen, we will mobilize all the resources, legal resources, to assist these blind and deaf people that are living there that are facing this, and also making sure that we put pressure on the law enforcement and the community leaders, Stephen, because there is no community that has no leader.
It's also, people are just doing this because they can get away with it. They're picking on people, really. I've never heard of something like this. Do you think that the police need to be more involved as well?
One of the complaints that the matter has been on the cards for quite some time, Stephen, and the station police station commander knew about it, and they've been all over the show. These members of ours. And trying to get some help, and help was not forthcoming, and at the last instance, now that there's this desperate situation, that they now had to get someone at least to take up the matter, and we will be in court tomorrow as well to make sure that we press for opposition of the bail for these people, because they are indeed vulnerable. We don't know. We've seen examples in the Eastern Cape where people go and lay charges, and the next day people are out and people are then attacked and assaulted.
Oh, I can just imagine. And to protect yourself when you're blind or when you're deaf is very difficult to do, and to call for help is very difficult as well.
Exactly, Stephen. We're sitting with another big one relating to a school in Kimberley as well, where the land was taken by the community. The school has no hostels. So this invasion of land must stop. Government must come to play in terms of providing land for these people, so that then they don't take easy land from vulnerable people.
Lewis and Zamande, thank you for getting in touch. Really appreciate it. Director at the SA National Council for the Blind, phoning in after hearing that conversation. It's on sabcnews.com is where I saw it this morning. The story about blind and deaf people being really targeted by protection rackets in Mthatha. Churchill on the line from Mthatha. Churchill, hi, good morning. Are you seeing more protection rackets there, extortion?
Absolutely, my brother. Some people have actually closed their businesses because it's all over. It's all over the show. And unfortunately, nothing is really going to happen as long as there's no political will. Once there's no political will, because unfortunately, you see some of our leaders rubbing shoulders with these people who are known, rubbing shoulders with them, especially during when they're campaigning for election. It's really sad. We are on our own. People have closed down their businesses. Even the Sasol that's next to Unitra, Wusu, closed down because they just come into a business and they ask for this protection fee. In some areas, there are people who have actually declared themselves as king, and people have to actually pay a protection fee to them. There's a certain amount of money that they pay every month to them.
Sure. All right.
That's what is happening. And nothing is going to change as long as there's no political will that these people, because they are known.
Yeah.
In fact, what is happening now, these are the people who are being idolized by our children because they get away with everything. They're wielding guns here, wherever they go. You can't imagine people going to shopping centers with guns. We have to give way because these people are getting these rifles.
Yeah. All right, Churchill and Mthatha, thank you for that. Okay, so different sort of strands to this conversation. It goes back to the same thing we're always complaining about, doesn't it? The police, the rule of law. We know it's been happening in Khayelitsha for a long time, but certainly people being sort of picked on. You heard what Churchill said as well about businesses having to shut down. More to come on the situation in Joburg and Ekurhuleni in the next little while. You're with SFM leading the conversation Monday morning, 7 o'clock.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30754. Now that's good news.
In our top stories, US Vice President vows to unite the Democratic Party and former VBS Mutual Bank executives to appear in court. Good morning. US Vice President Kamala Harris says she will do everything in her power to unite the Democratic Party and unite the nation to defeat Donald Trump in November. In a statement released after President Joe Biden announced he would no longer seek re-election while endorsing his vice president to replace him as party nominee, Harris said she was honored and it was her intention to earn and win the Democratic Party nomination. Sharon Bryce-Peace reports.
Harris said Biden's remarkable legacy of accomplishment was unmatched in modern American history, surpassing the legacy of many presidents who had served 2 terms in office. She said it was a profound honor to serve as Biden's vice president, calling his decision to step aside a selfless and patriotic act by doing what he'd done throughout his life of service, putting the American people and the country above everything else. Harris said they now had 107 days until Election Day, vowing to defeat Republican nominee Donald Trump this November. The Democratic Party chairman said in a statement that they took seriously their responsibility in swiftly delivering a candidate to the American people.
4 former VBS Mutual Bank executives accused of irregular activities that led to the collapse of the bank are expected to appear in the High Court in Pretoria today. They face charges of fraud, corruption, money laundering and racketeering. 2 SAMU leaders were killed and is suspected to be linked to the strong criticism of municipalities that invested public funds in the bank. The spokesperson for their families, Lucky Mani, has called on those that the bank's former chairperson, Chifiwa Matodzi, had listed in his affidavit to come forward with information.
All the people that are listed as in that case as the people that are part of, I don't know to call it a syndicate. My advice would be the best is to free themselves. Freeing themselves is to speak the truth so that they can get their own freedom. In turn, that will not be only their freedom that they will get. They will be helping us and the rest of the people that suffered. People suffered differently. We lost our brother and some lost their monies. So we have been robbed.
A man has been arrested in connection with the death of his friend and colleague in Namahale outside Palabora. Limpopo police say the suspect and the victim had travelled together to Burgersfort, where the victim got a new job offer at one of the mines. The victim's family reported him missing after he did not report at his new workplace and was unavailable. Police say the suspect later pointed out a shallow grave. He was also allegedly in possession of the deceased vehicle, bank cards and cell phone. Messages on the phone indicated that a bank loan of 25,000 rand was made when the victim was reported missing. The suspect will face a murder charge when he appears in court soon. Police Minister Senzo Mchunu says addressing the scourge of crime in the Eastern and Western Cape provinces will be part of the key priorities his department will keep a close eye on. Mchunu concluded his two-day ministerial stakeholder engagement in Gqeberha yesterday, which kicked off in the Western Cape on Saturday. Under-resourced police stations and a lack of police visibility topped the agenda in the Eastern Cape. Mchunu says they will work with all these stakeholders to tackle crime in the Nelson Mandela Metro.
So we met commanders with a long discussion where we were assessing, among others, police stations, functionality and all of that. But then we met stakeholders. We are happy with the overall outcome, that people realize, they see themselves and feel that they are not safe and they are concerned about it. But what is good, they are prepared to do something about it. They want to meet us halfway, and on our side, not only are we prepared to fight crime, but it is our mandate. It is the mandate of the South African police to fight crime.
High murder rates, extortion and gender-based violence are the leading crimes in Motherwell. Community member Mandisa Norman says they are losing hope with police in fighting crime in the area.
There is nothing that the minister can give us or tell us because he has nothing. He was given whatever he was given by those that were there. But the main people are the ones that are outside here, that are not part of that. So I am saying, minister will hear. If a minister was in the stadium there, in Nelson Mandela Stadium, and listen to what the community is saying there, I'm sure that is the only time that the minister was going to have a planning of what to do in order to combat the crime within in Nelson Mandela Metro.
And finally, the Deputy Health Minister, Dr. Joe Phaahla, will today lead the South African delegation to the 25th International AIDS Conference in Germany. The conference will bring together scientists, policymakers, healthcare professionals, people living with HIV, funders and communities. They will share information on HIV/AIDS. Sub-Saharan Africa has the highest rate of HIV infections. The National Health Department spokesperson, Foster Mohale.
This conference provides a number of opportunities for South Africa to share lessons learned from the discovery, medicines trials for HIV vaccines, the latest results from HIV prevalence, incidence and behavior survey, among others.
Recapping the top story, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris says she will do everything in her power to unite the Democratic Party and unite the nation to defeat Donald Trump in November. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 30754 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out.
Many insurers claim to be the best, but the proof is in the numbers. Outsurance has consistently had the best ombudsman for short-term insurance results for the past 11 years. And Outsurance clients always get something out. Outsurance pays over 1.7 million rand in out bonuses every day. Why would you want to be with anyone else? SMS out to 30754. 30754. That's out to 30754 or visit outsurance.co.za for a 10-minute quote that could save you thousands. Licensed insurer and FSP, TCs and information online.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, rugby, Rassie Erasmus is facing a tough Springbok selection for the upcoming tests against Australia and Argentina. Athletics, South Africa's Akani Simbine boosts confidence with a 9.86 seconds ahead of the Paris Olympics. We'll bring you the details just before 7:30.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Heavy pressure around Lenasia, the N12 highway being closed off between Protea Glen and Eldorado Park. That's if you're coming into Joburg. There's some disruption on the Potch side as well, the Potchefstroom bound side, but it's the main closure coming inbound from Protea Glen that's forcing all that N12 traffic up through Protea Glen, so that's heavy. And then your link roads from Lenasia up to the N12 are closed, so Klipsrand Valley Road's closed, and also the 554 route passing the cemetery also closed, so motorists around Lenasia having to duck out via sort of Freedom Park and Aikenhoff, and there's some very heavy disruption not only on the highway but also around Nirvana Drive and the Golden Highway exits as well. Very heavy backlogs there. Long queues coming in from the Vaal, a crash between Randvaal and the Heidelberg Road exits. The R59 towards Joburg really badly backed up. Truck fire of Vosloorus continues to backlog traffic arriving into the Barry Marere exit on your way through to Joburg. Crash blocking a couple of lanes between New Road and Allendale. The N1 through Midrand is heavy. There's queues all the way back through to Brockfontein, and it looks particularly bad. Durban still clearing a crash on the N2 South before Inanda Road, so there's a delay coming down from Queen Nandi Drive, and that traffic on Cape Town's N1 inbound towards the flooding at Sable Road is now pushing deep back into Kraaifontein territory. There's some real problems getting off the N7 into the N1, northbound from Goodwood, southbound the N7's backed from as far as Plattercliff Road. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
9 after 7, good morning. Well, more in a moment on the situation in Joburg and Ekurhuleni. Are you with SFM? I'm Stephen Grootes, by the way. Talking, of course, about whether or not there's going to be a change there. Is Kabelo Gwamanda going to lose his position? We'll hear from his political party, El Jamar. Hear the latest from the situation with Action SA as well. They seem to be a prime mover in all of this. Also, this dispute between NGOs and the Gauteng provincial government. The latest on that.
Nick is hiding a dark secret. For 20 years, everything has been going according to plan. Until now. He has the perfect wife, Maya, a smart, ambitious defense lawyer who is on the verge of becoming the first black director of public prosecutions. Amidst the biggest case of her career and having her life under intense scrutiny, Maya learns of Nick's dark secret and how she was one of Nick's targets 20 years ago. The veil of secrecy will fall. Nothing stays hidden forever. Betrayal, secrets, suspense. Oh, the drama. This is Undercover, Mondays to Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on S3. Channel your best drama with BBC Primetime, only on S3. Open up.
S3. Futafree is more than just football. It's a celebration of passion, community, and the magic of Africa's beautiful game. Futafree goes beyond the final score. Uncover the heart of the game with special profile segments, taking you on a captivating journey across the continent. Experience the fabric of African football. Futafree every Saturday at 1:30 p.m. on SABC1 and Mondays at 6:30 p.m. on SABC Sport on TTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the
game. Big stories of the day. #SAFM Sunrise.
11 after 7, good morning. More indications today that the political situation in both Joburg and Ekurhuleni may be about to change. Action SA leader Herman Mashaba confirming to the SABC he's in talks with the ANC about, I think the phrase he uses is stabilising the metros. It could mean that the current Joburg mayor, El Jamar's Kabelo Gwamanda, could be removed. At the same time, there is a big debate around whether the national coalition government could now cascade into local government. In other words, whether the parties in the national coalition coalition government will work together in metros like Joburg and Ekurhuleni. Let's start with senior political reporter here at the SABC, Samkela Maseko. Samkela, good morning.
Very good morning to you, Stephen, and to the listeners.
You spoke to Herman Mashaba yesterday. What are you expecting to happen in Gauteng?
It's going to be rather interesting because Action SA has realized that sitting in the bystanders and not being in government is going to erode their political base. Hence, they were politically obliterated in the last national elections that just took place. They did not do as much as well as they anticipated to do. They just only came out with 4 members of parliament. And they are ultimately saying now that it is time perhaps that they change their own stance, especially after they feel that the DA used and dumped them, particularly after the elections and after the failure of the Moonshot Pact to dip the ANC under 50%, because that was solely done by the MK party. They are now in negotiations with the ANC in Gauteng in order to get back at the Democratic Alliance for using and ditching them at a national level. So essentially, Herman Mashaba in the negotiations he's been having with the ANC, in particular with TK Ngwiza, the provincial secretary, Panyaza Lesufi, the provincial chair, and also Dada Morero, the regional chairperson of the ANC and MMC of Finance in the city of Joburg. Herman Mashaba is saying that it's in the best interest to stabilize these particular municipalities, but in the exchange that Action SA in Tshwane gets the speaker position. Hence, you see the motion of no confidence that has been put against Mayor Silius Brink by the ANC in Tshwane, because they are further emboldened by the association and the unhappiness of Action SA at this point in time.
So would this mean Kabelo Gwamanda would lose his position as Joburg mayor?
The truth of the matter and the reality is that Kabelo Gwamanda is left with about 2 weeks as the mayor of the city of Joburg, so said one leader in the city of Johannesburg, and it has been put forward that the ANC has a standing conference resolution that Dada Morero must be the mayor of the city of Joburg, but that will also depend on the political machinations within the governing party. But he seems to enjoy majority of the support in the REC at this point in time, and is a very close-knit relationship with the president of the African National Congress, Cyril Matamela Ramaphosa, who has been pushing for the stabilization of these particular municipalities. And also, you'd remember, the ANC has a coalition framework that the majority party in council must be the one that is afforded the opportunity to be the first to form government. So what will be happening will be in line with the ANC's coalition framework. And you've also seen the ANC's national leadership in the form of the Secretary General Fikile Mbalula saying that they are going to be zooming in these particular metros to look at this relationship of the ANC and the EFF. So the bringing in of Action SA also tilts the scales in favor of the ANC and in favor of the likes of Panyaza Lesufi, who do not want to work with the Democratic Alliance, but may be amenable to working with an Action SA of Herman Mashaba, which also now perceives the Democratic Alliance as an enemy.
Samkela Maseko, thank you. Senior political reporter here at the SABC with SFM. Just gone 7:15. Listening to that, the leader of the political party, El Jamar, Ghanif Hendricks. Ghanif, good morning to you. Is Kabelo Gwamanda, your mayor, about to be removed from office in Joburg?
Good morning. No decision has been made by any structure of the ANC, even the regional committee where it all starts and then it goes to province and then it goes to national and then it goes to the Big Seven. That's a process that the ANC follows when appointing such a very senior position. The ANC asked me to lead Joburg 16 months ago, and we accepted the challenge to gain experience for members of our party. We are a small party, and wherever we can get experience, we take the opportunity. Also, the smaller parties will remove the speaker, will remove the chief whip of the DA, and later the speaker of the DA. We work very closely with him. They have to be considered in this matter. Otherwise, the ANC will show that, it's not a party to be trusted. I agree, and myself and President Malema agree that the party with the most seats should start the government. But the ANC had a problem 16 months ago. They came to Al Jamaa, the presidency came to me, the premier of Gauteng came to me, and they told us that they told the regional committee of the ANC that they are going to ask me to lead. So I am meeting with them tomorrow. In fact, I'm flying, a party has dispatched me today to go to Joburg because there's a lot of media speculation. One of the things that concern me is that this comes at a time when a group of organizations led by the Ahmed Kasari Foundation also calling for the removal of the mayor. So I spoke to the regional secretary of the ANC about this, and they said, yes, they came to see us some time ago. They came to see us twice, and each time we chased them away because we're very happy with how you are leading Joburg. And the same thing was said by Malema, and the same thing by the Patriotic Alliance. You know, they don't easily praise you. So that is the situation at the moment. Al Jamaa is ready to serve. And we're very grateful for the experience that our members are getting, especially these two kids from Soweto. The media, obviously, from day one has been pushing that both of them be removed. Their wishes will now be granted, and well done to the media.
All right, Hanif Hendricks, thank you, founder and leader of Al Jamaa. Let's see how that story plays out over the next couple of days. 18 minutes after 7.
Imagine if you could save time like you save money. A second here, a minute there. Type a little faster, walk a little faster. Or you could stop scrolling on the internet. Just think of all the hours you'll save. Now what if you could take all that time and invest it? Watch it grow. Until eventually, one day, you'd have so much time that you wouldn't know what to do with it all. But unfortunately, time doesn't work like that. It can't be stored or banked. And unlike money, you can't make it back. That's why after 50 years of investing, we've learned that time is the greatest gift of all. And the good news is, if you invest early, time gives you money. And then money gives you more time to do whatever you want to do, even if it is scrolling on the internet. Ellen Gray, long-term investing. Ellen Gray is an authorized FSP.
The Rockets are assigned to question the German way of the beautiful game in a South African style. They want to start the new season with a coveted trophy, but FC Augsburg want to conclude their tour to Mzansi with a great result leading to the new German Bundesliga season. Mpumalanga province will vibrate when TS Galaxy and FC Augsburg lock horns. This is the Mpumalanga Premiers International Cup 2024. Catch the spectacular contest between TS Galaxy FC and FC Augsburg on Saturday, 27 July at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Tickets are available at CompuTickets. Proudly brought to you by the TS Galaxy Foundation and SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
SAFM 104 to 107. Nationwide.
20 after 7, good morning. The Gauteng provincial government saying it's now apologising to non-profit organisations or NGOs that haven't received the money that they did receive in the past from the provincial government. Dozens of organisations that look after orphan children or elderly people or people living with disabilities have been without money despite applying for the money as normal. They've received money from the provincial government for many, many years. Many of the NGOs have in fact reported that the provincial government has simply not replied to their applications. We'll hear in a moment from the acting head of department in the Gauteng Department of Social Development, Bongani Ngumani. First, let's hear from Lisa Vetten, who's been representing and speaking to many of these organisations. She's a research associate at the Southern Centre for Inequality Studies. Lisa, good morning. These groups applied for money in the same way that they have for many years. What happened after that? Many of them simply didn't get a reply.
Yes, what happened was that the procedure was changed under the previous MEC. She'd said that there had been complaints made or recommendations from the Auditor General saying that the entire process had to be altered because there were problems with it. Now, that is something that the Auditor General has subsequently denied saying in media reports. So there's a big question there as to why the process was altered in the way it was. So what it meant was that at the start of April, when the new financial year kicks in, organizations didn't know if they were going to be funded or not. So some closed at that point because they didn't want to incur debt if they were never going to be funded ever again, whereas others have tried to struggle on, even if they did accumulate debt, and some did have savings to take them through. But it's left, I think, the entire sector in a very fragile and precarious state, and is now in need of a great deal of stabilization as well as rebuilding if it's to achieve its purpose.
And these are groups that have received money for years, right? They're accustomed. They've employed people on the basis of receiving this money.
Yes, in fact, our entire social care and development system is based on the model of partnership between government and NPOs. So it actually dates back to 1937, this model. That's how old it is. Government provides subsidies, as it does to school and universities, to NPOs who provide services on its behalf. And that's the important thing to remember, is that these are not hobbies that NGOs are engaged in. They're actually fulfilling the state's mandate in terms of Section 27 to give people the right to social assistance.
Lisa Vetten, thank you. Bongani Ngumani is the acting head of department in the Gauteng Department of Social Development. Bongani, good morning, and thank you for your time this morning. Is this money now going to be paid?
Good morning, sir. Good morning to listeners. Yes, we have started paying money already. You will realize that in terms of our annual calendar, we are now on the third quarter. On the second quarter. So we have paid more than 700 organizations so far in the first quarter, and we continue to pay in the second quarter. However, those that are new applicants are the ones that are delayed. Those that are applying for the first time, we call them first new applicants. They are the ones that are delayed because their process is a bit different from the old ones.
Let me put it to you like this. The organizations that received money under the previous system and have received this money for many years, are all of them going to be paid? These are not new applicants. These are people who received money in the past. Will they all get paid?
According to our books, most of them have been paid. The few that are not paid, there are those that are not compliant and those that are under investigations. And we are in touch with those organizations. We are handling those matters with them. But there is no organization that has been receiving money in the past few years, and specifically last year, that this year is not yet paid, unless it falls under those two categories. Not compliant, meaning in terms of their registration, there are challenges, or in terms of their programs, there are challenges, or for certain reasons, they are under investigation.
Okay. Organizations have been receiving this money every year for a long time, and suddenly the system was changed, and when they applied for it, there was no response. Now, under the law, it's a thing called PAJA. If you apply for something, you have to get a yes or a no response. And there was simply no response. So this was clearly a political decision. Has the MEC now reversed the decision? Are we back to where we were 2 years ago?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Okay. And let me clarify also something. To say there was no response, it may not be entirely correct, because we have been in touch with these organizations as early as mid-March this year, most of them, sending them SLAs, phoning them, telling them that their applications are successful or not, even writing letters to some of them. And some of those organizations, we're even coming to our offices for updates on their applications. There might be one or two isolated cases, but at this time, I do not know any organization that will say, since we applied, we have never been contacted by the department.
So on the record, every organization has got its money apart from maybe one or two cases. That's what you're saying on the record, Bongani?
No. I'm saying except those that are under investigation.
Sure.
And are non-compliant.
Sure.
But most of them have received their payment.
You will know that this has led to a huge amount of disruption. I mean, some closed down, as you heard from Lisa Vetten a few moments ago, because they didn't get their money when they needed to get it. And now we're back to where we were 2 years ago. So it seems to me that all of this disruption and nothing's really changed. What was the point of the disruption?
The intention really was not to disrupt the system. The intention was to ensure that there are stringent and strong checks and balances in the system. Because as we were engaging with investigators, even with the public, there were complaints. Even with auditors, there were concerns raised on monitoring of NPOs and how the system generally is being managed. So,
but the Auditor General said they were being misquoted by your department. Your department said we're changing the system because the Auditor General wants us to change it. The Auditor General's office said that's not true.
You know, when we met with the Auditor General after that press statement, they denied that. The Auditor General, first thing, they denied that the person who was quoted there is part of them. They said they don't know that person. We had a meeting. That meeting was recorded. And they therefore said they will follow up with their own internal process. They will conduct their own internal process and come back to us. We just need to follow up on that statement, on that press statement that was released by them, because we are constantly in touch with the Auditor General. We may not have raised the issue the way they raised it, but they raised concerns concerning how the NPO processes in the department were managed. So we were not really just disrupting. Ours was to try and enhance systems, procedures, and ensure that the checks and balance ensure proper accountability on how money is dispersed, how money is managed in the entire NPO sector.
Bongani Ngomani, I appreciate the clarity. Thank you. Acting Head of Department in the Gauteng Department of Social Development. You were there, SFM, a little bit late for sport, 29 after 7.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. Rassie Erasmus.
Yes, he has a challenging task ahead of the Rugby Championship, with so much of the box over the weekend showcasing depth with the 7 debutants. There was standout performances from Jan Hendrik Wessels and Sasha Feinberg Ngomezulu. Erasmus is now going to have to put pressure on the likes of Mani Libok. Libok struggled with his kicking. With the Rugby Championship squad announcement imminent, there's going to be an interest from fans to see who'll make the cut for the upcoming tests against Australia and Argentina. Athletic sprinter Kani Simbine peaking just in time for the Paris Olympics, clocking a season's best of 9.8 seconds at the Diamond League in London, finishing second to the world champion Noah Lyles. On to golf news, Xander Schauffele won the 152nd Open Championship at Royal Troon yesterday. The American carded 6 under par 65 to finish on 9 under for the tournament, 2 shots ahead of Justin Rose and Billy Horschel. It was Schauffele's second major win following his victory in the PGA Championship in May. Here's Xander Schauffele.
Yeah, it's an honor. I've always dreamt of doing it. That walk up 18 truly is the coolest, with the yellow leaderboards and the fans and the standing ovation. It really is one of the coolest feelings I've ever had in my life. I got chills walking down and quickly had to zap myself back into focus because the tournament wasn't over yet. So, I can't wait to enjoy this with my family.
And finally, cycling, Tadej Pogačar sealed a sensational Tour de France Giro d'Italia double by winning stage 21 time trial in Nice. Wearing the yellow jersey, the 25-year-old Pogačar finished the stage a blistering 1 minute and 3 seconds clear of the second place Jonas Vingegaard. That's a wrap of your sport. We'll bring you more here on Sunrise at top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. Good morning. We'll have more on the situation regarding Nahawu, and Becky Mtolo. No love lost there, it would seem. You with SFM leading the conversation just after 7:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, President Cyril Ramaphosa will respond to the debate on his opening of Parliament in the Cape Town City Hall later this morning. Ramaphosa delivered his speech on Thursday evening. The Senzo murder trial is expected to resume this morning at the High Court in Pretoria. 5 men are on trial for the murder of the Bafana Bafana captain who was shot dead in 2014. And leading Democrats have been quick to praise US President Joe Biden for his decision not to seek re-election in November and for his legacy. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
This traffic report is driven by performance. Be prepared to perform with Bridgestone.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Well, very heavy backlogs around Lenasia and Protea Glen this morning. The N12 highway closed on the top of Lenasia, effectively from Protea Glen through to Eldorado Park on your way into Joburg. That's forcing some crazy congestion off the N12 up through Protea Glen and forcing some really heavy backlogging from Lenasia out towards Aiken offside. So routes like Nirvana Drive and Golden Highway heavy. There's no access from Nirvana Drive up towards the N12, the 554 route past the cemetery and the Klipspruit Valley Road. M10, that road is closed as well, both ways. So pretty aggressive protesting in the Lenasia area and a major disruption for traffic flow. R59 coming into the Vaal stage, very heavy in the Randval area. That's a crash. A truck fire at Vosloorus still backlogging traffic arriving in from Heidelberg side. There's been a crash on the Mike 1 North near 11th Avenue, so very heavy this morning from Boysons all the way through that Houghton area. The N1 South collision before Allendale, that's clear. The backlog now sort of normalising for this time of morning, but it's busy. Brockfontein interchange down to New Road, and there's a breakdown on the N1 South before Linwood, so if you're coming from Storenville, that's quite heavy this morning. Durban, the M7 into St John's Avenue Bridge, one of those really busy, jammed up mornings from Hunt Stetman, North Dean, North Park area, all the way through is bad. The N2 from Cement Factory up through Westwood Mall, that's heavier than normal. You've got a crash between Queen Nundy Drive and Inlander Road on the N2 coming south, causing backlogs as well. And Cape Town, we've been warning about this N1 and the flooding blocking some lanes at Sable Road in front of Century City. The traffic into Cape Town this morning is all the way back into the sort of farmland territory, back to those fields in Justenburg. That's how bad it is, all the way through Kraaifontein, Brackenfell, Belleville, down through Parow, N1 City, all the way through. And then routes that feed into the N1 pretty heavily back, particularly the R300 coming up from Cales River, and especially the N7, north from Epping, south from Dunoon. Some real issues getting off that N7 and trying to squeeze into that impossibly heavy traffic N1 inbound through that N7 towards the flooding. It is very heavy. Also, worth a mention, Marine Drive, some traffic light issues around Milnerton High School again, so heavy coming out of the Tableview area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This traffic report is driven by performance. Be prepared to perform with Bridgestone. Be prepared to perform with Bridgestone. Purchase 2 or more tires at participating dealers and stand a chance to win your share of 2 million rand worth of Samsung products ranging from phones, tablets and TVs. Enter now at bridgestone.co.za. T's and C's apply. Bridgestone. Prepare to perform.
The business update on SAFM.
Intaleng morning again. How the market's looking?
Kicking things off in Asia. Now, markets pretty mixed, but mostly trading lower. Investors have remained concerned about the effects of the Microsoft outage that hit services from airlines, banks, and financial services worldwide. The deepening China-US trade tensions, as well as uncertainty about the outcome of the upcoming US presidential election. With that, China's Shanghai index is down 0.86%, while Japan's Nikkei falls 1.1%. Over in Wall Street, U.S. futures are flat, just above the flat line. Traders are assessing the implications of President Joe Biden's decision to bow out of the presidential race. This move also comes ahead of a week loaded with major earnings releases, especially out from the tech sector. Bringing it back home, local markets have continued to struggle, trading in the red. The all-share losing just over 0.5% in Friday's close as global market sentiment sours. The rand, in the meantime, still steady under that 18.30 mark. It's currently trading at 18.24 to the dollar.
And then Microsoft, that outage affecting South African companies.
Well, a global issue with Microsoft's Windows operating system related to cybersecurity company CrowdStrike has also affected South Africa, causing crashes that impacted the hospitality, banking, and media industries. Local organizations such as ENCA, the JSE, and Capitec were some of the companies affected. Now, the IT glitch wreaked havoc on Friday and comes after CrowdStrike sent out a corrupted software update to a number of its customers, Microsoft being one of those customers. Now, Microsoft has confirmed that about 8.5 million computers around the world were disabled by the outage. This is the first time a figure has been put on the incident and suggests it could be the worst cyber event in history. Now, the global glitch has put Microsoft under scrutiny yet again, even though it wasn't really responsible for the outage. Now, digital rights activists have sounded the alarm on big tech monopolies like Microsoft, saying such companies should be broken up. In the meantime, CrowdStrike has not given a time frame on when order will fully be restored. The group's CEO said on X that it would take some time. IT experts, however, have warned it could take weeks for systems to fully recover.
And then Accelerate, reporting downbeat annual performance.
Stephen, if you've been to Fourways Mall, you'll notice that there are a number of vacant stores, and this has been one of the reasons for Accelerate's downbeat earnings. During the annual period, the part owner of Fourways Mall reported a 0.8% fall in rental income to 873 million rand, while funds from operations, now this is a metric used to measure property companies' performances, it slipped into the red. The group reported a loss of 72 cents per share from earnings of close to 11 cents per share in the previous period. Accelerate has pointed to significant geopolitical and economic headwinds affecting the property sector, as well as those high interest rates. The group has also been dealing with high debt levels, and in a bid to improve liquidity, Accelerate has embarked on a disposable program. So far, it's disposed of properties totaling 202 million rands, with further disposals planned. In addition to that, the group also raised 300 million rand through a fully underwritten rights offer. Now, markets have been punishing Accelerate of late, especially after it delayed the release of its results twice this year.
Intaleng, thank you. Intaleng Lechela, of course, back with us tomorrow. More business news through the day here on SAFM.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
All right, well, that's the number. Lots to talk about these attacks on blind and deaf people in Mthatha. You heard from Churchill about the protection rackets there, how big a problem that is. Also, the situation in the Middle East, conversations about that this morning. The situation regarding NGOs in Gauteng, well, quite a strong sort of comment by the Gauteng provincial government. They say that everyone is now being paid. There have been big issues there over the last little while. And then, of course, the political situation in Joburg and Ekurhuleni. Action SA always said they didn't want to work with the ANC. Now it seems maybe they will. So very interesting to see how all of that plays out. You know the number. There's been a big story debate over the weekend where it seems that the Hawks have found a drugs lab in Groote's On, that's in Gauteng. Limpopo, excuse me, and it seems that a huge amount of drugs, 2 billion rands worth of crystal meth, were actually found there. Colonel Katlego Mogale is the spokesperson for the Hawks. Colonel Mogale, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and to your listeners.
What did you actually find in this meth lab?
We found processed meth, crystal meth, as well as chemicals that are used in the manufacturing of crystal meth.
And how long had it been operating for, do you know?
At this stage, it's too early in the investigation to ascertain how long the operation has been going on. We are looking into that, and 4 suspects will be appearing in the Grootes On Magistrates Court this morning.
And how did you first hear that this lab was operating there?
We received information from one of the people living around that area that he took cognizance of activities that were going on in the farm, which did not necessarily give guidance to the fact that it is a farm.
Right, I'm with you. Okay, so they're doing strange things, basically, and someone was very observant.
Yes.
And I mean, when you've got to do investigations, obviously arrest the people who are there, all of that. But I presume there are other labs like this. I mean, people make a huge amount of money out of it.
Thus far this year, we have counted on about 9, of which 34 suspects have been arrested. And yes, because it's such remote areas, there could be other labs that are operating at this stage.
Colonel Katlego Mogale, thank you, spokesperson for the Hawks. And I mean, it just shows you, if you see something strange happening, it is worth phoning the police. I understand why you might be cynical about that, but it really is worth doing that. 18 minutes to 8.
Nothing beats the feeling of relaxing on your couch after a long, hard day, getting rid of those work clothes and feeling the freedom of being in your PJs. Throwing off that lace front, undoing your hair, that makeup, voila, gone. It's going to be a quiet, relaxed night. Well, not on S3. Bring a whole lot of vroom to your weeknights with Top Gear Season 16. Monday to Wednesday at 10 p.m. and Top Gear specials such as Top Gear from A to Z and Top Gear The Races. Friday nights from 9 to 11 p.m. Channel your inner vroom with BBC Primetime. Only on S3. Open up.
Real savings, real benefits. Here's what real clients say about OUTsurance.
Hi, my name is Jackie. I'm 35 years old from Pretoria and I only pay 691 Rand for my 2022 Ford EcoSport with OUTsurance Comprehensive.
What makes the best car insurer? The best price with awesome service, right? SMS out to 30754 to see if you can pay less, experience awesome service, and see for yourself why OUTsurance was voted best car insurer by many publications and best car, home, and business insurer at the News 24 Awards for the past 2 years.
I'm not surprised they won all the awards because in my experience they are excellent.
They walk the talk. They actually do what they say and they follow through on their promises.
SMS out to 30754 and see for yourself. Experience awesome. Go to outsurance.co.za for a 10-minute quote that could save you thousands. Licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
From 1952 in Helsinki to 1996 in Atlanta, Penny Haynes makes history 44 years later. The sensational swimmer ended the long wait with victory in the women's 100-meter breaststroke.
Haynes tried to hold Beard off again. She did it in the 100. Can she do it in the 200?
Champions always want more, especially at the Olympic Games. Haynes was not content with just one gold. She scooped the second in the women's 200-meter breaststroke in a brand new Olympic record.
Haynes will win gold for the second time, an Olympic record time.
Magical moments of the Olympic Games. Brought to you by SABC Sport, proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024.
For the love of the game.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
Good morning. You know the number 086 000 2032. Fred on the line from Limpopo. Fred, hi. The issue of NGOs in Gauteng, how do you read it, Fred?
Hi, Stephen. How are you?
I'm well. Go for it.
Yeah. Look, Stephen, it's very concerning that some of the things, when we treat them in a way to compel others. You know, I do understand that the department haven't paid, but this should not be treated as if the department is owing the NGOs. The reason are as follows. Number one, you must remember that the department has to fund these people, not to pay them, but to fund them as in line with their available budget. And if it can be treated as if it's a liability against the state, it will be wrong. The NGOs must as well go look for funding in other avenues. If we really can stick to one department, as if this department cannot be able to fund, people will not be surviving, then it's a problem. We'd rather be in a position to look for other avenues, because these are the kind of things that really at the end of the day might speak to the promotion of corruptions and so forth, because people are taking and treating it as if it's a liability for the department to make sure that they are paying almost every year, and it's wrong.
So, Fred, I mean, I hear that, but this model goes back to 1936. There's a children's home that's been receiving money for year after year. It's had to shut down now. I mean, I don't know if they'll be able to open their gates again, but I mean, if you get money from the same source and it's from government and this is an agreement and it goes on for year after year, and now you don't get the money and there's no warning and you apply for the money and you don't hear back, what else do you do?
Stephen, like I'm saying, it was wrong in the first place for them to create that as a norm. It was very wrong. Funding depends on the availability of funds. And funding cannot just be something that is automatic, whereby one can even go to the media to say, no, I was not paid, this is the liability. This is something that is supposed to be based on availability of funds, whereby the state has budgeted enough to can as well be able to assist other entities. But given the fact of what the state or the department is going through, perhaps, let them learn to be patient. And I'm happy that the spokesperson made it very clear to say we communicated with them, and they are those with outstanding documents. So we really don't understand. Yes, of course, our government, one was pointing a finger to say they are not working. But where they deserve to be appreciated, we rather be.
Well, Fred,
let's not just keep on putting a finger all the time. We understand that we are failing as the government.
Fred, let me just say we've been trying for months to get the Gauteng provincial government to explain their position. For months, and finally they have. So, now we kind of know where we are. We know what they say, because for months they just haven't come on. So, Fred, I hear you, and our job is to put people on. But finally, they've now spoken. Thabo in Johannesburg. Thabo, hi. You're part of the Amapanyaza teacher assistant program, and we've seen this. Good morning. What's on your mind this morning, Thabo?
Yes, good morning, Stephen. I was part of teacher's assistant from last year, February.
Yeah.
Yes. So when we were working, we were given about 6 months contract, and then we worked. When we were working, we also deducted UIF from our payment, and some of the money they say was coming from the government. So as we started, the requirements are your matric certificate or your grades where you finished your school, and then they wanted a police clearance, of which a police clearance cost about 170. So now they're taking us and unemployed youth from the township to put us to school to work, and then now we have this challenge of getting the 1C. Okay, when we went to the police station, they said we can do vetting. Vetting is basically doing your fingerprints on the paper, but it doesn't go to Pretoria for verification whether you have criminal record or not. So,
okay. So Thabo, your point is you don't have the money to actually get into the system. Is that what you're saying?
No, the point is I'm done. We were taken out of the program. Some of us who delayed to submit the fingerprinting, of which we were given a time that if we submit on this time, then we continue working. But if you don't submit your fingerprint certificate, you are out of the program. So now there's no communication from the government to us, those who were taken out. There's also those that are being taken out now. They are doing 35 years. The system is taking them out. They are going back to the streets. And as some of us that went out because of police certificate, we went out of the streets. We don't know what's happening with our UIF. Sometimes we get, when we were working, you get paid after 4 months to 3 months. It's even shocking. Some even worked for 6 months without getting payment.
Yeah.
The payment, it comes from the government to the schools. Now the principal is dictating on how and when we must get paid.
Okay.
So now we are asking ourselves, how do we get our UIF?
Sure.
Can we please know that? Because we were deducted UIF from February to October.
All right, Thabo, I hear you. I don't know if we can help you with that. We'll try. Let's just see if we are able to get some sort of confirmation on that. But I think that might be a tricky one. I'm not sure how all of that's supposed to work. Very difficult situation. Sorry. I'm sorry for you, Thabo. That's not an easy situation at all. 9 minutes to 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Update on the Lenasia situation. It's a sort of full closure, full shutdown. The N12 Potchefstroom Highway between Protea Glen and Eldorado Park now fully closed again both ways. The 554 passing the cemetery from the N12 to Lenasia Drive or to Nirvana Drive is closed. So that's the 554 route. No access between Lenasia and the N12 and nearby the M10, the Clip Spray Valley Road. Same sort of deal between Nirvana Drive and the N12. That is closed as well. So terrific pressure as motorists divert from the western side of that closure up through Protea Glen. There's some very heavy congestion there. And then routes like Nirvana Drive and the Golden Highway between Lenasia and Aikenoff are all heavily backed with motorists diverting that way as well. Other issues this morning, the N3 coming into Joburg from Heidelberg, a truck fire incident at Barry Marais still causing some delays. The N1 through Midrand side staying quite busy. The earlier crash at Allendale's being cleared, and you've now got a backlog from effectively John Foster down to about Olifantsfontein Road, and a crash coming away from Montana this morning. The N1 South, the collision scene down by the N4 Emletheni Highway split. So from Sefako Makato down through Storhamful Road, that is all very heavy. Durban's having a busy Monday as well. There's some big traffic on the N2 from Chatsworth all the way through to Westwood Mall. The M4 from Clarewood up into the CBD, dealing with the closure of Brook Street at the top of the M4. That's still very heavy. And the M7 going into Pinetown, really slow this morning from Hunstedman up through to St John's Avenue Bridge. There's also some delays on the N3 moving from the M7 down towards Richmond Road and Richmond Road up in towards Pinetown. Very busy as well, busy around Pinetown side. Cape Town, the flooding on the N1 into town at Sable Road, which has been there since last week, is this morning causing havoc. The queue starts right back around sort of Kraaifontein, Justenburg area. It's very heavy. There's a lot of traffic on the N1 into Cape Town this morning. Behind that, the R300 backs from Cales River. The N7 both ways, very heavy as you approach the N1 off-ramps. And just away from that, if you're driving in from Somerset West, there's a crash involving a taxi between Broadway Boulevard and Macassar Road exit. So coming through from Somerset West, that's quite heavy. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Big stories of the day. #SAFM Sunrise.
7 minutes to 8 the time. Good morning. A comment over the weekend by the ANC KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Secretary Bheki Mtholo that members of the union Nahawu are responsible for the bad service people get at places like Home Affairs offices or SASSA or Labour Department inspectors. Nahawu has given him 48 hours to reject his comments and apologise. Ayanda Zulu is the Provincial Secretary for Nahawu in KZN. Ayanda, good morning.
Good morning to you and morning to your listeners.
Why do you want Bheki Mtholo to apologise? Is he wrong to say that your members are responsible for the services people get at government offices?
Well, we have given Mr. Mtholo 48 hours to make a public apology on the basis that the statement that he has made is unfortunate and is also defamating workers who are severely understaffed. If you look at all the departments that you have mentioned, we went to Home Affairs, which is one of the departments that is severely understaffed. We spoke about SASSA, we spoke about Labour inspectors. All these departments, even the ministers that are responsible for this department on public platforms, because of the government's austerity measures of downsizing the public service, they have agreed that they are severely understaffed. That is why there are long queues. If Mr. Mtholo is someone who understands how the public service works, he would have understood. That is why in our statement we are very clear that we are responding to a madman. So NEHAW, as a progressive union, we have been having some campaigns. There's a campaign that we always work with the community-based organization, including leadership, but Mr. Mtholo will not know because he is someone who does not pay attention to organizational issues called Public Service Delivery Campaign that talks about issues that relate to public service in departments like your health, your home affairs. That is on how to deal with the issue of long queues.
But, I mean, do all of your members treat people who need government services with respect? We hear stories. People say, I waited for hours. People weren't doing anything. Sometimes people say I was insulted by your staff at these offices? I mean, they're not all your members, but do you believe all of your members are treating people who need services with respect?
Definitely. Remember that in the public service, NEHAW is not the only union that is organizing. So it's difficult to make a conclusion about the public service space to say NEHAW is doing 1, 2, and 3. But I can assure you that all those who are members of NEHAW are patriotic citizens. That is why, as part of the work that we do as the union, is to ensure that our members understand that task at hand, but also they are progressive, patriotic citizens, that they know that at the point of production, their responsibility is to provide services to our people, but not to withstand the severely stress our members. Because one of the things that many people do not want to appreciate is the impact of the downsizing, the austerity measures, the shortage of staff have in the public service, which result on long queues.
Well, I mean, queues were there before, but I hear you, and you've made the point. Ayanda, you say you're a progressive union as NEHAW, correct?
Yes.
Is it really progressive to accuse someone of being a madman, to claim in a statement that they have a history of mental illness? I mean, should a union that represents people in the health sector say something like that? To refer to mental illness in this way as an insult? Is that really the right thing for a progressive union to do?
No, it's not an insult. Is the conduct at which he behaved that demanded that particular response, because he insulted us as the union unprovoked.
Sure, but isn't it an insult to call someone a madman? I mean, there are other ways you can criticize what he said, but that doesn't mean you should insult him, is the point.
No, it's not an insult. It's who he is.
Okay, so you're going to stick to the claim that he's a madman?
Yes, he's definitely a madman.
And you represent nurses. You represent thousands, hundreds of thousands of nurses. And you're happy to insult someone by calling them a madman.
That is why we definitely said that our members will be ready to provide him with treatment, because you can't insult people without any proof.
But you're doing exactly the same thing. I mean, exactly the same thing. And you represent nurses, and you claim to be progressive. Surely a progressive union should care for people and shouldn't insult people.
No, we're not insulting him. It's who he is. He needs help. That is why we said, even like our members were going to provide help to him, because it's a mad person who can insult us unprovoked and reduce all the crises that are in the public service to us as the union.
And you still say you're progressive?
Yes, we're definitely progressive.
Okay. If he doesn't retract in 48 hours, what are you going to do?
The union is going to take legal action on the defamation, and we're going to ensure that wherever he is, wherever he speaks, he does not get a platform, because we're going to ensure that we mobilize our members across the region. He would never he would never rest until he makes a public apology about the unfortunate statement that he has made.
And just remind me, Ayanda, you're part of COSATU and you're part of the tripartite alliance with the ANC, and Becky Mtolo's from the ANC.
Yes, definitely.
Ayanda Zulu.
But that does not mean that we cannot take him on. We have always taken government ministers on, even if they are members of the ANC.
Ayanda Zulu, thank you. Provincial Secretary for the National Education, Health and Allied Workers Union. You were there, SFM, leading the conversation, 8 o'clock.
In our top stories, Ramaphosa to respond to debate on his opening of Parliament speech, and Democrats praise Biden after quitting the presidential race. Good morning. President Cyril Ramaphosa will respond to the debate on his opening of Parliament in the Cape Town City Hall later this morning. Ramaphosa delivered his speech on Thursday evening. Political parties had the opportunity to debate it during a marathon sitting on Friday. In his speech, the first to be delivered as the head of the Government of National Unity, Ramaphosa said the 7th administration would focus on inclusive growth and job creation, reducing poverty and the high cost of living, and thirdly, to build a capable, ethical and developmental state. While those in the GNU did not sugarcoat the speech, the opposition benches criticized Ramaphosa, saying he did not bring anything new to the table. The Senzo Mehiwa murder trial is expected to resume this morning at the High Court in Pretoria. 5 men are on trial for the murder of the Bafana Bafana captain who was shot dead in 2014. The murder happened at his then-girlfriend and singer Kelly Khumalo's parental home in Vosloorus, east of Johannesburg. Vodacom's forensic liaison supervisor, Pinky Vaithaligam, spent some time on the witness stand unpacking cell phone data. She put the spotlight on a phone associated with accused number 3, Mtobisi Ncube. While Ncube denied being in Vosloorus on the day of the murder, she said the cell phone tower where his phone pinned placed him in Vosloorus between 1 and 3 p.m. on the 26th of October 2014.
Regarding the presence of this device between these times where it was recording the Vosloorus tower,
I can conclude by saying that this handset endings 8169 was in the vicinity of Vosloorus during this period of 26th October, during those times.
The families of 2 trade union leaders suspected to have been killed for blowing the whistle on the looting at the VBS Mutual Bank hope those who ordered their shooting will soon be arrested. Ronald Mane and Timson Musecho, who were based in the Vembe District Municipality, were killed in separate incidents in 2019. Currently, 3 Radzuma siblings are being tried for their murders. The bereaved family spokesperson Lucky Mane believes the former VBS chairperson Shifiwa Matodzi's affidavit has clues on who might be behind the killings.
When I analyze it, I think that affidavit will then also lead them, give them some leads that we can be closer into finding the justice as the family. I'm not on that field, but if ordinarily looking and reading through the affidavit, surely the Hawks should then now do their work thoroughly, because I think some leads are there for them to go and interrogate the case further.
Police Minister Senzo Mchunu says addressing the scourge of crime in the Eastern and Western Cape provinces will be part of the key priorities his department will keep a close eye on. Mchunu concluded his 2-day ministerial stakeholder engagements in Gqeberha yesterday, which kicked off in the Western Cape on Saturday. Under-resourced police stations and lack of police visibility top the agenda in the Eastern Cape. Mchunu says they will work with all the stakeholders to tackle crime in the Nelson Mandela Metro.
So we met commanders with a long discussion where we were assessing, among others, police stations, functionality and all of that. But then we met stakeholders. We are happy with the overall outcome, that people realize, they see themselves and feel that they are not safe and they are concerned about it. But what is good, they are prepared to do something about it. They want to meet us halfway. And on our side, not only are we prepared to fight crime, but it is our mandate. It is the mandate of the South African police to fight crime.
And finally, leading Democrats have been quick to praise U.S. President Joe Biden for his decision not to seek re-election in November and for his legacy. The party's leader in the U.S. Senate, Chuck Schumer, says he's a true patriot who has put America's future first. The former Speaker of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, who was reported to have expressed concerns about his candidacy in private, says Biden has been one of the most significant presidents in U.S. history. Addressing reporters, the Democratic Senator for Connecticut, Richard Blumenthal, says he's moved by Biden's decision.
President Biden has been one of the greatest, most courageous, and consequential presidents of American history. And he has helped to cement his legacy of leadership and vision with this decision. Let's be very clear. This decision was selfless and strong.
Recapping the top story, President Cyril Ramaphosa will respond to the debate on his opening of Parliament in the Cape Town City Hall later this morning. Ramaphosa delivered his speech on Thursday evening. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, rugby action saw the Lions and the Bulls topping the Currie Cup log with third straight wins. And Formula One's McLaren's Oscar Piastri secures his first Formula One victory at the Hungarian Grand Prix. All the details just before 8:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Heavy delays leaving Pretoria this morning on Route 1. There's been quite a nasty crash. N1 south at the N4, Emletheni split. Traffic's all the way back through to Montana, back towards Sefaka Makato, and looking pretty heavy. Further down the N1 through Midrand stays badly backed up. A breakdown by Olifantsfontein. That traffic all the way back through to John Foster Drive this morning. Plenty of traffic on the Mike 1 from Boysons right through to about Marlborough Drive before you feel like you're out of that pressure. And Lenasia remains closed down. The N12 Potch Highway from Golden Highway, Eldorado Park, down to the 558 at Protea Glen. It's all closed. Approach roads from Lenasia up towards the N12 are closed. So there's some real pressure around Protea Glen and around Lenasia as motorists hit those alternatives. Durban going north. The N2's heavy today from Cement Factory through to Westwood Mall. The M4 Southern Freeway stays really heavy from Jacobs all the way up in through the Kongela area. And Cape Town, the top story there, the flooding on the N1 inbound at Sable Road. That traffic coming in on Route 1 is all the way back to Brighton Road, deep into Kraaifontein territory. R300 north from Kales Rivers badly backed up to get into the N1 and the N7 both ways really heavy from Epping going north, from Dunoon going south. Again, problems getting off the N7 and into that N1 traffic. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
8 after 8, good morning, you're with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Curtis, glad you're with us this morning. Well, lots of conversations. You heard that conversation with Nahawu in KwaZulu-Natal about, the definition of progressive. Second time we've had that debate in recent times. Also talking there about, their response to Becky Mtolo. NGOs a big issue this morning. Other issues as well around Joburg and Ekurhuleni. What could change, what may not change, but looks like Kabelo Gwamanda may not be mayor for long. Let's just see how all of that plays out. On Friday, there was this big IT outage, and it had such a big impact on so many people around the world. We thought it was a good moment for a mediated conversation around how interconnected the world is. We'll be looking at that from 8:30. You know the number, 086 000 2032.
The countdown to the Paris Olympics 2024 is just days away. Live the intense rivalries, inspiring comebacks, and record-breaking performances from a wide variety of sporting disciplines such as aquatics, athletics, gymnastics, boxing, breakdancing, and football. Experience the Olympic Games Paris 2024 from Friday 26 July until Sunday 11 August. Live on SABC Sport, the proud broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024.
For the love of the game.
July is Film Month. KwaZulu-Natal Tourism and Film Authority welcomes filmmakers from all over the world who are attending the exciting festivities lined up. The Durban International Film Festival, Durban Film Arts and Isipeto program, the Simon Sabela KZN Film and Television Awards on the 20th of July. We look forward to hosting you in our beautiful province and doing tourism and film business. Join the conversation using hashtag SSA24, hashtag Beyond Imagination, hashtag KZN has it all.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Well, that's the number. Lee on the line from Cape Town. This issue of NGOs in the Gauteng provincial government. Lee, hi, good morning.
Morning, Stephen. I hope you and the listeners are well.
All good, go for it.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak. Basically, there was a caller who came in and I felt like there's a need for me to speak up on this, who said that NGOs are not entitled to the funding, but rather it depends on availability, And I just wanted to say it sounded very arrogant and very insensitive to say that an NGO who has been reliant or has had a reasonable expectation since 1936 to receive this funding should now in 2024 not expect that funding, and that it should seek other funding models and whatever. I doubt there's an NGO ever which relies solely on the state, right? NGOs try their best to seek other funding. And it's so disappointing to me to hear every single day how arrogant and insensitive, and I don't know, I'll use the word desensitized, how arrogant and insensitive and desensitized are the ANC government or leaderships and even their supporters leading up to the election and post the election. What is important to remember about NGOs is that they supplement a huge function that the government is supposed to be giving communities. And mostly because of their proximity to communities and understanding the true needs of communities, rather than the government who sits at a very aerial view towards community needs, you know. And NGOs do so at great cost to them, you know, and their personal time. Nobody starts an NGO for profit. I would like to believe people start NGOs because they're responding to the immediate needs of communities that they see. And, you know, the funding that they get from government, again, let's remember, it's not because government is such a great business leader and they make this incredible money from somewhere. They get this funding through the channel of taxpayers' money.
Sure.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
We, the taxpayers, we pay for things like this to happen in our communities because there is a direct relationship between neglected communities and crime.
Yeah.
There is a direct relationship, you know, and there is a direct relationship between neglected communities and underdevelopment in a country.
No, I hear you, Lee. Yeah.
You know, so it's very disappointing, almost heartbreaking. And I feel like this is the reason why the South African voter is so confused, because for me as a South African voter, nothing makes me so angry than knowing that you have one political party who has roots when it comes to the oppression of this country, but then they are doing certain good for certain communities, and then you have one political party who has roots in terms of the impact of the positive impact when it comes to this country. But right now, what they are doing is a polar opposite of what they promised. Yeah. So now you're caught in there, whether you know the racist rhetoric that comes from the DA, but you also know that at the same time, when they operate in the areas that they operate in, I'm not talking about African areas, but in the areas that they operate in, they do the work. And then you have the ANC, who's supposed to be at the helm of championing the poor's rights. And then where are they?
Yeah, no, Lee, I hear you. I mean, it's such an interesting point, and I think, you know, what you say will have some resonance with some voters. Maybe the elections show that, I don't know. But I hear what you say, and it's such an interesting point. I think the thing about arrogance as well is that I don't know if people in government realize the importance of their decisions and what happens as a result. Lee in Cape Town, thank you. Hassan in Johannesburg. Hassan Lorgat, I presume, good morning.
Yes. Hi. I've got a few points to respond to. One, you spoke to the young gentleman about UIF, and you had some difficulty to try and help him. I think there's Casual Workers Advice Center organization.
Oh, yes.
011-873-0903. They could help him. Yes. But I wanted to respond to the last debate, and I think Lee from Cape Town is onto something, but I think she puts the blame only in a political party rather than a system. I mean, many governments have tried to balance the books, and they push off their obligation to care for the poor onto communities. And I remember for a long time when I worked in the NGOs, and now I'm working with mining-affected communities, but then ministers like Squia and others used to love these NGOs because they did government's work.
Yeah.
Essentially, what the NGOs are doing is an extension of government. Those NGOs were loved. Those of us who criticized about socio-economic systems and that were criticized because, what are we doing? We're just talking. So clearly, this is part of the problem. This is the government's, it's the state's obligation to look after the poor and needy.
Yeah.
And then my next point, I really want to apologize again, because I also worked for a long time in the trade unions, on behalf of Nehawu. I really think the statement is unbecoming. I think he is right to say that there's underfunding and that there's a low morale, etc., and that's why workers, and not only Nehawu workers, provide the kind of services they provide. But then to insult someone with some insult about mental illness clearly is unbecoming for a union, and I feel personally hurt by it. But Stephen, I know you're going, and I hope you have a good time where you go. But maybe this discussion of what is progressive under the current circumstances needs to be held. So maybe there's an hour there that many of us can chip in. Really, the MK party can't be progressive if it wants to send young girls to Robben Island.
Sure.
All these kind of things. There needs to be some discussion and consensus.
No, Hassan, thank you. Sorry to interrupt you there. Yeah, actually, as I came into the 8 o'clock news bulletin, and I said to him, we really need to do a mediated on progressive. I think it's an important thing. 17 after 8.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
All right, lots of new people in new positions and making new statements. The new chair of the Standing Committee on Appropriations in Parliament, Musi Maimane, is leader of BOSA, say they want to try and have a leaner government. In other words, a less bloated government. They want to target unnecessary expenditure. Musi Maimane is on the line now. Musi, good morning.
Good morning, and good morning to fellow South Africans. Thank you so much for having me.
To cut back on government spending, the sort of stuff that we don't need. I mean, people always say they want to do that, but it's quite tough to do. Do you think, in the position that you're in, you'll actually be able to do much of that?
Well, first of all, Stevens, it's a privilege to chair the Portfolio Committee on Appropriations, and I think there's multiple layers of things that need to be done. I think that, as I've heard from public submissions, there are things we most certainly can cut. VIP protection as an argument is but one of those things. And so in our submission to the Minister of Finance, that's one of the key recommendations, because that outweighs the amount of money we spend on family and child protection services as an argument. It's not only just allocating cuts, but it's also eliminating things like leakages. You've got multiple municipalities whose spend is quite poor. And ultimately, with money being returned, that accountability must be felt, and we must be able to be proactive in making sure that those municipalities, as far as their equitable share is concerned, are monitored properly. And then lastly, I think it's about directing spend to priority areas. We talk about the debt servicing costs. Debt is but one conversation. But what is also equally important is that what are you borrowing for that purpose? If you're borrowing to just keep your operational expenses in place, you have problems. But ultimately, if you're borrowing for infrastructure, that has a guaranteed return of investment over a long period of time. So those must be reprioritization of spend. And I'm excited about the journey the committee is on, and certainly leading that charge in being able to go, let's adjust and let's make appropriate appropriations, if I could say.
I don't know if you have the authority here. You might well, in fact, as the chair of the Committee on Appropriations. But News 24 this morning is reporting that the Higher Education Department returned 580 million rand to the National Treasury because that was money that wasn't spent. And if you consider how many people are not able to study because they can't afford to, how much help, every higher education institution tells us they need more money. That's a huge amount of money that should have been spent and wasn't.
It's a complete failure, and I think we as South Africans must be as insulted by that as many students ought to be. There are two things. One, I've already written to the National Student Financial Aid Scheme to ask them to come and account for where they sit. I'm not certain that the institution like NSFAS serves the country well in the way the transfers work. And secondly, the higher education department, as part of the departments, will have to come to the Standing Committee on Appropriations. And that is certainly one of the matters that we will raise with them in discussing what happens in the midterm budget policy framework and going into next year's budget. Because as an oversight committee, these are the sort of things that we simply cannot be observers to. We need to take deliberate action. And certainly, as our committee, this is I've already began the first step of that. The next step would be to do it in conjunction with the Department of Higher Education.
Musi Memani, thank you. Chair of Parliament's Standing Committee on Appropriations, also leader of Build One South Africa. 21 after 8.
And we will buy 500 cars, and we will buy 500 more. Just to be the one who buys your car, will come to you and offer more. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da-da. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da-da-da.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
Every year, 30,000 missionaries are called to serve the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints across the globe, the largest full-time missionary force of any church. Most are under 25 and away from home for up to 2 years, and the biggest training center in Europe is located in Chorley, Lancashire. The Mormons Are Coming follows the journey of 3 young missionaries through the first few months of training and work in the field, which can make or break them. Tune into The Mormons Are Coming, Thursdays at 10 p.m. Channel your best dockies with BBC Primetime, only on S3. Open up.
The Science of Life on SAFM.
22 minutes after 8. Well, new indications that what's called sextortion, in other words, I suppose you could call it revenge porn, where people take pictures, usually consensually in some cases, of their partners, and then later, after the relationship has ended, threaten to release them if they're not paid any money, seem to be on the rise. Emma Sadler has written a book on the subject, a social media law specialist. She joins us now. Emma, good morning. Been a long time.
Good morning, Stephen. It's lovely to speak to you, and thank you for talking about this important topic.
How often is this happening? I mean, it's the kind of thing that seems to happen almost under the radar. People maybe pay the money, or they don't want to talk about it, or if it does happen, they try and downplay it. I mean, I would if it were me. How often is it happening?
Well, I think there's been a significant change in the last decade. You know, this has been something that I agree was kind of a little bit under the radar. People generally feel a bit silly when they find themselves caught in this trap. Oh, why did I send the stranger that I met online a picture? Things have developed. It's now a very, very common, serious international criminal situation. We're dealing with syndicates all over the world. They're targeting children. They're targeting adults. The primary targets in South Africa seem to be children in the age range 12 to 20, and particularly boy children. And what they do is they find you wherever you may be online. You know, so it's not so much a sort of a revenge porn situation as it was historically, where you maybe consensually sent pictures to somebody you may have been in a relationship with now. Now, it's much more where it's a sort of a catfishing situation, where you find somebody in a gaming chat room, on social media. Maybe they'll see that you're connected to, I don't know, somebody called Olivia on Instagram, and then take Olivia's pictures and pretend to be Olivia on Snapchat. And it's very often the sort of, if it looks too good to be true situation. But I can tell you that I see even the cleverest people getting duped by these scams, because they are so sophisticated. You know, it used to be that you could pick it up with the poor spelling, very low follow account. Now these accounts look so established. They are so sophisticated, and I'm seeing people being sextorted left, right, and center.
I mean, what does someone get from extorting a 12-year-old? They don't have any money. Do they end up having to steal the money from their parents?
Yeah, that happens sometimes. So the international syndicate, although I was dealing with a syndicate that was actually based in Joburg and was actually teenagers themselves, turned out they were trying to get drug money. But generally, at the moment, it's these international criminal syndicates. We've traced some to the Philippines, some to Nigeria, but it really is a faceless crime. Trying to get to the bottom of who is behind these accounts is very, very difficult. And the other big change, Stephen, is that they will solicit naked pictures from people, or private sexual pictures or videos. But the other thing we're seeing a lot of is the use of AI technologies to fabricate these pictures, where the child hasn't even sent a nude, but they've created a fake one using pictures that are available, and the child is so scared that those pictures are going to land up on porn sites that they capitulate and pay. So sometimes it starts very small, send me 500 Rand to my e-wallet. Sometimes it's send me Bitcoin. Sometimes it's some currency for an online gaming site. But generally, what they want is international money transfers. That's kind of what they're after. If anybody out there has been the victim of sextortion, and I can tell you, Stephen, there are months, there have been months this year where my phone has rung between 10 and 15 times a day from parents of victims of these children who are so, and they are, the threats are so extreme. We have seen suicides internationally as a result of children finding themselves just in a helpless situation because they are sextorted so badly. The people are relentless. If you have been the victim, if you know anyone who's the victim, my website, the digital law company, I put all my stuff in there in a blog, all the advice that needs to be followed.
All right, and that's free advice, Emma.
Oh yeah, always free advice. I don't charge children ever. Or you could go to the FBI's website. They've got some advice. Because you see the problem, Stephen, and I'm sorry to punt. I really wasn't trying to punt myself, but the problem is that these children so often are scared to approach anybody for advice because they feel like they've made a misstep. They feel very embarrassed that they've done this. That's not the case in the deep fake pictures, but there's still embarrassment. So they're very slow to get help. And what we found is if the children pay even once, even the tiniest amount, they do not get left alone. These people, they will create literally thousands of different phone numbers to continually harass that child. So this is not a play issue. This is a very, very serious issue. We're literally seeing deaths as a result of this. There are crimes behind it, extortion, threats. We have the laws, but in the case where we don't know who's behind the content, those laws are pretty ineffective.
Emma Sadler, thank you. Expert on social media law, really appreciate it. 27 after 8.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. The Currie Cup.
Yes, it was exciting one. Bulls and Lions, they roared at the top. Rugby fans know this is going to be an epic season. And this is how they did it. The Lions defeated the Griquas 25-13 at Ellis Park, while the Bulls clinched 25-13 win over the Cheetahs at Loftus Versfeld. Other matches, the Pumas beat the Sharks 31-21 at Kings Park, and Western Province secured their first win with a resounding 64-15 triumph over the Griffins. Meanwhile, Springbok 2019 Rugby World Cup winner Sbu Nkosi has tested positive for an anabolic steroid. This according to an official from the Bloemfontein-based Cheetahs team. The 28-year-old winger, who understudied Cheslin Colby at the World Cup in Japan, could be banned for 4 years if his B sample is also positive. Another 2019 World Cup winner, Springbok fly half Elton Jantjies, was suspended for 4 years last January for using the banned substance clenbuterol. Cycling action, Tadej Pogačar sealed a sensational Tour de France and Giro d'Italia double, winning the stage 21 time trial into Nice. Wearing the yellow jersey, the 25-year-old Pogačar finished the stage a blistering 1 minute and 3 seconds clear of second place Jonas Vingegaard. Here's Pogačar.
The moment with the team on the podium in Nice, this was really, really special. It really warmed my heart, and this was I don't know, it's hard to explain. It was really moment of joy, and I think this will stay forever in my head, how we celebrated on podium together.
And finally, motorsport. Oscar Piastri secured his maiden Formula 1 win in yesterday's Hungarian Grand Prix with Lando Norris in second for a McLaren 1-2. Mercedes Lewis Hamilton completed the podium at the Hungaroring, where McLaren celebrated their first front row lockout on the grid since 2012. Max Verstappen, who still leads the championship from Norris, finished fifth. A late lunge by the three-time world champion Verstappen past Hamilton forced his Red Bull off the track, with the stewards reviewing the incident. Here's the race winner, Oscar Piastri.
Yeah, I mean, I put myself in the right position at the start of the race. A little moment in the middle on the hard stint, but an amazing day for the whole team. Obviously, a 1-2 for myself, of course, extremely happy. Still some things to improve and work on, definitely, but I feel like I did a lot of things right in that race, so incredibly happy to have my first win.
Let's wrap up your sport on Sunrise. We'll bring you more sport on SFM around 12:30. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. The global IT outage and our interconnectedness. That's next. You're with SFM leading the conversation, 8:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, financial expert Prem Govender has advised South Africans against the premature withdrawal of their retirement funds. She was reacting to the Pension Fund Amendment Bill that was signed into law by President Cyril Ramaphosa. President Cyril Ramaphosa will respond to the debate on his opening of Parliament in the Cape Town City Hall later this morning. Ramaphosa delivered his speech on Thursday evening. And the N1 in and outbound in the area of Sable Road at Century City in Cape Town has been closed due to wetland areas having reached capacity and spilling over onto the roadway. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Heading coming out of Pretoria on your way to Joburg, two issues to work through. One is quite a nasty crash scene. N1 south at the N4 Emalatheni highway split, so traffic parking back to Sifaka-Makato, back to Montana. That's pretty heavy. And then once you work through that, there's some pressure of traffic between Brockfontein and Olifantsfontein Road. The N12 and associated routes between the highway and Lenasia remain closed because of protesting. Effectively, the N12 from Eldorado Park to Protea Glen's closed. So Protea Glen taking a lot of diverting N12 traffic heavily and slowly, and Nirvana Drive, Golden Highway options are heavily backed up as you divert out towards sort of Fun Park and the Aiken offsides. A lot of pressure around that Lenasia area. As you can imagine, the N12 being closed is enough to cause chaos, but then all that Lenasia workbound traffic being caught as well. Durban's having a really busy Monday. The N2 north from Cement Factory up through Westwood Mall remains heavily backed up. M4 through Umbilo Congela into the CBD still really heavy. A crash on the N3 driving out through Pinetown towards Pietermaritzburg just by Richmond Road. That's all causing some delays as well. And then Cape Town, as you heard in the news, that flooding, we worried about this morning because the flooding on the N1 inbound near Sable Road was backlogging traffic significantly over the weekend, and Monday morning was always going to bring a ton more traffic, and it has. The N1 into that flooded area, queues from Kryfontein, that's back in the farmlands area. Behind that, the R300's a heavy queue from Kales River to try and get into the N1. Same sort of deal with the N7, north from Epping, south from Plattekloof. Big problems on that N7 again, just trying to get into that really heavily backed up N1 inbound. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
27 minutes to 9. Time now for your mediated conversation this Monday morning. On Friday, there was another reminder of how interconnected our world has become and how something that happens in one place can have a huge impact in many, many other places. In the US, in the state of Texas, is a company called CrowdStrike. Until last week, I'd never heard of it. On Friday, a person hit the send button on a piece of code that was due to update security software. There was a problem with the code, and that meant suddenly, around the world, computer systems began to fail. At the same time, the company Microsoft appeared to have its own problems with a piece of cloud software called Azure. In South Africa, all of this led to problems at Capitec Bank. The airline FlySafair was not able to take new bookings for a time. In other parts of the world, the impact was actually much, much worse. In the US, thousands of flights could not take off. Payment systems didn't work. And you can imagine, if you can't pay for something with your card or your phone, life literally grinds to a halt. So then, how did this happen, and what does it tell us about how our world works now? First this morning, Sibusiso Shishi is an offensive cybersecurity specialist at Iron Sky. Then Billy Peltzer is a cybersecurity system expert and research group leader at the CSIR. And finally, what this reveals about how the world works. Arthur Goldstuck's tech expert and founder at Worldwide Works and Gadget magazine. We start then with the cybersecurity specialist, Sibusiso Shishi. Sibusiso, good morning and thanks for your time.
Good morning, Stephen. Thank you for having me.
What happened on Friday? Why did so many computers around the world suddenly crash?
So as you said in your introduction, is that unfortunately a piece of code made its way into the update channel and got pushed out to millions of computers around the world. So this piece of code was released around about, according to CrowdStrike, at 4 a.m. UTC time, which is about 6 a.m. South African time. And then there's on forums such as Reddit, there were people starting to chat around, hey, my computers are blue screening, and they started to blame Microsoft. And then, so obviously the situation got much bigger when people realized this is actually CrowdStrike. They pushed a piece of code that had a null point on it, and basically it just killed the machine and it blue screens the machine, and the machine can't be used after that.
As from what I understand, the software is located right in the root of the system. In other words, in my experience, if you boot up an old computer, you'll see text, I think it's called BIOS, before you actually see Microsoft Windows, right? Is that where the software was, right at the sort of beginning of everything?
No, so this is an EDR product. So it's basically like a better term, an antivirus. So it sits on two places. It sits on something called the user LAN and then the kernel side. According to CrowdStrike, the issue which this happened was when the machines try to boot into Windows, there's certain files that need to be pulled into them from the kernel. From the kernel side into the user LAN side, and that code is sitting on the user LAN side, and that's the code that sort of like blue screen the machine. So this piece of code it works. So at CrowdStrike, it works when you power on your machine because it's an executable on your device. Just to protect your machine.
Okay, so it's got to be there because that's the only way to completely protect the machine.
Yeah, so it's more for just to protect you against malicious code and hack. Is basically being able to come into your machine. And so, for example, these antivirus companies and these EDR companies, they want to make sure that they're injecting themselves into places that are extremely sensitive. So, for example, the kernel side. So the kernel is sort of like the very lower end of the system, because obviously, if you have access to that portion of the code, you can see everything above it, and also be able to protect the machine much better that way.
How difficult was it for these machines then to be rebooted? How did people have to get them working? I read in some places people had to reboot machines 15 times.
So unfortunately, for a lot of IT support staff this weekend, they had to physically go to the machines themselves and actually do and log them into safe mode to delete the file, the file that was causing the issue, to get the machines back into working format. I saw a post on some of the airlines where all the airline IT staff were basically running around in the whole airline on the airport, rebooting the machines manually and getting them to safe mode. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, this was a manual task that needed to be done.
And these are often computers that don't have, a mouse or a keyboard, attached to them. I've worked in radio for some time. There'll be loads of computers that actually don't have screens because they don't need them. They do a very specific thing.
Totally, I fully agree. And that's the unfortunate part of it, and also the machines that are like extremely remote. So you can just imagine some poor techie driving out for 4 hours, to reboot this machine because it does something critical for that organization. And the worst part of this whole situation is around the potential money that was lost for a lot of these organizations. Because obviously having an IT meltdown in your environment is very catastrophic for the environment for the company.
Were there two separate crashes, CrowdStrike and Microsoft, or were they related to each other? Did one happen first and cause the other?
According to, as far as I understand, it's just they're just totally unrelated. It's just that Microsoft just had a degradation of their services. The CrowdStrike portion of it is totally related to a faulty patch that got released, and the Microsoft was just a meltdown that just happened. It's around about the same time as well.
Is it difficult to make sure this doesn't happen again? I would like to think that CrowdStrike and Microsoft will be working out what went wrong and make sure it doesn't happen again.
So there are things that companies can do and one of them is sort of like putting in a delay as to when patches get pushed through. Because if you realize that the systems that basically crashed, or the systems that blue screened, a lot of them had something called auto updates, which means that they get the patch directly from the vendor and they're applying it immediately. So what organizations can do to mitigate against this is to on their production environment, maybe leave that and then have like a dev environment where the development environment the patches get pushed to, and then the IT guys could test to make sure that those patches are stable and good before pushing them onto the production environment. Because the problem is that if you're taking something from a vendor and directly from the vendor onto your system, without testing it, you don't know what's going to happen with your own systems, because obviously the organizations may have their own custom code that they're running on their systems, and this could also crash the system. So it's just a matter of just making sure that you put in a delay as to when things can happen before applying to the systems.
Thank you very much indeed. Sibusiso Sishi is an offensive cybersecurity expert, a security specialist at Iron Sky. You're with SFM, 19 minutes to 9. Continue your mediated conversation around what we can learn from what happened last week. Billy Peltzer is an expert on cybersecurity systems at the CSIR. Billy, good morning.
Stephen, good morning. Thanks for having me.
We've seen more and more attention being paid to cybersecurity. It's a huge industry. Is it also growing more complex? In other words, more actors doing more different things, which could mean to more incidents like this?
Yes, absolutely. I think firstly our reliance on technology has been increasing and will only be increasing in future. But then what we also see is that crime that takes place now, it's not just highly technical crime and cyber attacks, but any crime now has a component of technology to it as well. So the landscape's become immensely complex, and our reliance on technology has become immensely increased as well. So unfortunately, we can only expect to see a lot more of this going forward.
I mean, one of the things that's intriguing to me is that what you seem to have in IT is more and more threats, right? So you need more and more protections. And these protection systems, antivirus software for most of us, become more complex. And does that have an impact on a system? You have to run all of this protection software that sort of sits on top of everything.
Yes, absolutely. I think, the solutions have become complex because the problems are complex. But I think another challenge as well is that a lot of these organizations are offering like one-stop shop solutions. So one entity, one security company would provide a whole suite of security products and tools and things, meaning that you kind of have a single point of failure as well, like we've seen with CrowdStrike. And I think it absolutely highlights how dependent we are on these tech companies. These kinds of outages do happen. We've seen it with Facebook and WhatsApp in the past, but nothing this widespread before. Some people say this is the biggest tech outage that's ever happened in history. So I think it's quite telling.
There are many things that have happened as a result of all of this. So if you look at the way this software works, and I'm talking about virus protection software, it needs to work in a particular way. And I presume that means it needs to access and be involved in the entire system.
Yes, so one can say that your security software, your anti-malware, in a sense, is also like malware, but because it needs elevated rights or access to your operating system. Of course, it needs that for a good reason, and it's meant to protect. But it does show that we are kind of vulnerable with what we're running on our machines, and that we have to kind of trust, these companies at the end of the day, because we do give them kernel level, root level access to our machines.
What does kernel actually mean in this context?
So an operating system has security layers to it. Typically, you don't want a piece of software to have too in-depth access to the operating system. It can make too many changes. It can get too much information on the operating system. So kernel level access basically means you can have the most elevated access on the system. And then things like this can happen, as you've seen.
Okay. Is there a sort of protocol? Are there best practice? Are there ways in which you can make almost certain that your system is protected from a cybersecurity point of view from threats? I'm going to come to protecting it from the thing that's supposed to protect it from the threats in a moment, but is there a way that you can be almost sure that actually your information is going to be safe and your system can't be hacked?
I wish I could say yes, but you could be 100% sure. Unfortunately, in security, there's always a level of vulnerability. But there are things that you can do. So we call it defense in depth. So it's building in multiple layers of security around the thing that you are trying to protect. And then, of course, as well, if you have critical systems, when you design it, you want to build in things like redundancy, high availability, disaster recovery, so that if some of your systems do go down, because you have to design it with the assumption that something will probably go wrong at some point, you need kind of backup systems that can take over and will not have the same issues than your main systems that have failed.
How expensive is it to have a system that is sort of acceptable, if you like? You're running a big thing. You're running a company or a government department. We've seen them being hacked. We've seen companies being hacked in South Africa too. Is it very expensive to have a system that is reasonably secure, if I can use that phrase?
Yeah, so security can be expensive, again, depending on what you need to protect. I think, protecting things at the right level for what it is. And there's a whole risk assessment process that goes with that. But of course, the flip side will be much more expensive if your systems do go down, if you do lose loss of productivity, loss of access. The impact will be much more than what the security cost would be in the first place.
Is the nature of the threat changing? There was a time when you just didn't want a virus, and the virus didn't really do anything. I mean, it was malicious, it was bad, could even destroy a computer in some cases, but it didn't really do anything. Now you have these sort of extortion rackets, which 10, 15 years ago you didn't seem to have. So are we seeing the nature of the threat, what you're protecting yourself from, changing quite quickly?
Yes, I think as technology changes, the threats also change. But at the end of the day, a lot of the crimes that are perpetrated are still same old crimes, just being used with technology now. So ransomware is quite right at the moment. It is it's like a virus. It's malware, but it now encrypts your computer and then basically keeps your data at ransom. You have to pay for it in Bitcoin. So the concept of keeping something to ransom is not new, but the way which is being implemented now is novel. And the way in which you can now pay the attackers through Bitcoin and crypto, that's a novel way now as well. So things definitely are evolving and are changing, and it's quite tough to stay ahead of the game when it comes to these things.
Do we know, we know that there are international groups that are doing this. Can I presume that the threat our systems face is the same as the threats in China or the US might face?
Yeah, so that's the risk of globalization and interconnectivity, like the internet, is, your attacker doesn't have to be in physical proximity anymore. They can sit on the other side of the world. So pretty much everyone is vulnerable to anyone across the world. So we definitely do face a similar risk to, as many of these other countries.
For example, not every country in the world is connected to the internet in the way we are. China has a slightly different system. Does that give them any protection, for example?
Protection would be tough to quantify, but I do think the South African landscape makes it difficult for us. I think we have, high cell phone and internet penetration in the country, and they also have low levels of income and sometimes low levels of education, which creates kind of this landscape. A lot of people have access, but they don't have education and know how to work with technology, and they don't know how to spot scams and things. So we have a lot of people who fall prey, unfortunately, as well. So we do have a bit of a unique landscape in the country, which makes it a bit more tricky, I think, than it is in many other countries.
Our Presidency Minister, Gauteng, she was speaking last week about how the State Security Agency needs to start working on cybersecurity. And I always sort of feel that government is never going to be able to pay what the private sector pays for IT experts. And IT experts, I think, can be quite expensive. Well, very good ones are, of course. Does our government need to give this a lot more attention? But I presume every company or anyone who runs a system must also protect their own system. You can't ask government to do it, but should government play a role too?
Yes, absolutely. And we've seen it with legislation as well, the Cybercrimes Act, the Cybercrimes Bill that will be incoming. So government has put a lot of emphasis on it, but it's still a long way to go. So I think just from a legislative perspective, the right steps are being taken, although it takes time to implement. And we've seen with the South African Police Service, they have established what's called the Cybercrimes Designated Point of Contact, which aims to support police stations and policemen on the ground with investigating cybercrimes. So things are happening, and government is putting initiatives in place, but the government definitely needs, I think, support from private industry as well. I think it has to be a collaborative effort across the board between private and public partnerships. It's not something we can just look at and point to one entity and say, government must fix everything or private industry must fix everything. We need to work together at the end of the day.
Billy Peltzer, thanks very much indeed. A cybersecurity systems expert and leader at the CSIR. You with SAFM, your mediated conversation around all of this will continue in a moment with Arthur Goldstuck, 10 minutes to 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still very heavy backlogs around Lenasia and Protea Glen with the closure of the N12 effectively between Eldorado Park and Protea Glen. If you're on your way into Joburg, coming from Protea Glen, can confirm that closure. If you're on your way the Potch Highway down to Protea Glen, coming from Eldorado Park, it looks like you might be able to get through, but there's some very heavy backlogging going on there. The Cemetery Road, the 554 that links Nirvana Drive up to the N12 Highway, that's all closed down as well. And then terrific pressure, really heavy congestion on the alternatives up through Protea Glen and down through Lenasia, routes like Nirvana Drive and Golden Highway, really seeing some heavy backlogs. Just away from that, a crash on the N3 North at Marlborough Drive, so traffic coming through from Edenvale being held up. A breakdown on the M1 South at Buccleuch, so as you work through some very heavy traffic, sort of Brockfontein to Olifantsfontein, you're not quite done because you'll get out of that and you get to Allendale and then backlog into that breakdown. Still some queuing pressure coming from Montana down the M1 South towards a crash by the N4 Emila-Flenish split. Durban's been really busy this morning. The latest as we look at the situation live, the N2 North from the M7 up towards Westwood Mall, still very busy. Still slow on the M4 Southern Freeway in through Congella towards the closure of the M4 Brook Street. Richmond Road that links you from the N3 Highway up towards the bottom of Fields Hill, up towards Pinetown. That stays slow. And don't forget in KZN, there'll be the closure today for bridge works between Lions River and Balgowan. Motorists will be diverted for 2 hours from 10 until 12. Truckers that arrived into that area just north of Howick between 10 and 12 will be stacked. Operation Stack will apply for the heavies today. And Cape Town, you heard about this in the news, the flooding on the N1 inbound at Sable Road having a really dramatic impact. The N1 into town stays heavy from the R300. It'll probably be heavy for quite some time today, if not all day. The R300 North is badly backed up from Brackenfell trying to get into the M1. And the N7 north and southbound, some very heavy backlog going on there. Southbound from Plattercliff Road down to a crash at Bosman's Dam, and then some congestion trying to get into the M1. And the N7 north from Epping, really big backlogs up towards the M1, and others are ducking off the N1 queue at the N7 and jamming that route down into Goodwood towards the Ford Trekker Road. Also, a couple of crashes and breakdowns on the N2 before you get to Hospital Bend this morning, so N2 inbound from the airport stays pretty heavily congested as well. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
8 minutes to 9 the time, looking at our interconnectedness after that massive global IT outage. Arthur Goldstuck's tech expert and founder at Worldwide Works. He joins us now. Arthur, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen.
This is a real reminder of how interconnected we are. I mean, you have a person in Texas literally stopping banking systems from working. How long has it taken us to be this interconnected? The process sort of started quite slowly and has really sped up over the last few years.
I guess there were three major phases in this massive interconnectedness. And the first was when the internet went commercial in 1994. And the second probably happened at a very similar time, which was the emergence of the mobile phone. But it was only in about 2008 with the advent of the App Store from Apple and the Google Play Store in its early versions that we started seeing all our activities becoming interconnected. And then the next big one was around 2012 when cloud computing went mainstream. It had been around for about a decade up to that point. Amazon Web Services, in effect, invented the commercial cloud computing industry in around 2006, built in Cape Town initially, by the way. And then in 2012, there's a favorite video of mine showing the very first ever TV ad for cloud computing from Microsoft, interestingly. And those two companies still lead the world in cloud computing. But thanks to the cloud, thanks to apps, and thanks to the internet, our systems have become increasingly integrated. Our lives become increasingly dependent on all of these systems.
It's easy to point to Friday and say, well, this shows you that we should not be like this. But I'm presuming that cloud computing has changed the world largely for the good and made things much cheaper.
It's mostly for the good, and it mostly has made our lives more efficient, a lot of services a lot more cheaper. It's also become possible, though, to sell a lot more services to us. So the reality is that it has become almost a commercial quagmire for companies and for individuals. But at the same time, when we look at the benefits, they are so massive that you cannot roll back the clock on this kind of connectedness.
Okay, we have all of this happening now, and one of the things that happens in these situations is that there's a couple of days worth of sort of media coverage of the big outage. This is what happened. This is what we know about what happened. The CEO of some American company gets dragged onto some American television station and forced to say, we're working on it. But after that, we never really find out what happened. I mean, maybe people do, and I just don't read that. But, I mean, is there a duty on these companies to tell us? And I can't imagine one person is responsible. I would like to think that on a system like this that affects so many computers, lots of people would have looked at the code. And yet I also know capitalism, everything for the lowest bidder.
Well, in this particular case, we do know exactly what happened. We just don't know exactly who was responsible. But you can be sure heads are going to roll internally. But I think there's also going to be serious regulatory investigations. You're probably going to have congressional hearings and Senate hearings in the United States because of the massive losses and disruption to critical systems as a result of this. So it's not just a commercial loss. It also disrupted the world's economy, and in particular the American economy. So they are going to have to answer to government as well, and we can probably expect to see greater regulatory oversight into these kinds of systems and services. But you hit the nail on the head, though. One would imagine that an update like this, one of your previous speakers alluded to this, you would have various fail-safes built in. In other words, you would have a developer environment, as he said, what I would call a sandbox environment in which you test the rollout and you make sure that there are no issues involved there. And then you roll it out. We have seen these kind of misconfigurations in the past. There was the famous one about 2 years ago when Facebook went down for half a day and billions of people couldn't get access to a range of Facebook-related services, and that included Instagram and WhatsApp. So it wasn't just a social network that went down, it was global communications that went down. And what was the fault? There was a disconnection from Facebook's data centers to the internet, and that connection was a result of a faulty update in the data center. It happened at a time when most people were off work. There was the hilarious image of people depicting Mark Zuckerberg using an axe to break down the entrance to the data center to get in to fix it. That's kind of what it comes down to when you have these kinds of misconfigured updates that no one is paying attention to.
What is utterly bizarre about this, as human beings, Arthur, is that there's certain things that we rely upon. We rely in South Africa on WhatsApp hugely. It's provided really free by a company that has shown itself in other places to not really be any kind of help to humanity. It wants to make money. We have systems like this around the world that banks rely on, airlines rely on, and nowhere can you hold anyone sort of politically responsible. It's all companies, and companies can either decide to institute some kind of consequence for the people who did it or not. Sometimes it's the owners who make the mistakes. The point I'm trying to get to is it's a very strange way to run things that are so vital to humanity at the moment. They're all run by private companies in other countries.
Agreed. It's going to take someone going to jail before greater accountability is taken on this kind of dependency. But it also highlights the fact that we always, and all of us, companies and people, need to have a plan B.
Thank you very much indeed, Arthur Goldstuck, tech expert and founder at Worldwide Works. Really appreciate the time. My thanks also to Billy Petzer, the CSIR cybersecurity system expert and research group leader there, and Sibusiso Siship, the offensive cybersecurity specialist at Iron Sky. Well, thanks very much indeed for being with us today. Really appreciate it. We, of course, will be back tomorrow. I'm off to go and look for my car keys. From Zelma, from Mdu, Melissa, Stanza, myself. Look after yourself. You at SFM, leading the conversation. Good morning. It's 9 o'clock.
In our top stories, financial expert weighs in on pension fund amendment bill and Ramaphosa to respond to debate on his opening of parliament speech. Good morning. Financial expert Prem Govender has advised South Africans against the premature withdrawal of their retirement funds. She was reacting to the pension fund amendment bill that was signed into law by President Cyril Ramaphosa. The law now implements the two-pot retirement system, which means 1/3 of retirement contributions will be split into a savings component and 2/3 into a retirement component. This will enable members of retirement funds to access their savings without having to resign. Workers in good standing can withdraw up to 30,000 rand of their pension fund savings, with the minimum being 2,000 rand. Govender says while this could help as an immediate financial buffer, it will have a negative impact on one's overall retirement payout.
I know that people are eagerly awaiting this, and yes, while it will make a difference to their lives, my fear is that people who don't need it are going to withdraw that 30,000. I think the best advice we can give your listeners is please do not be tempted to draw out those funds if you don't need it.
President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to reply to the debate on his recent opening of Parliament address this morning. It was a joint sitting of Parliament which brought together delegates of the NCOP and members of the National Assembly. Ramaphosa's speech under the government